Welcome back. Our next speakers are from Synergy Lab. Synergy Lab supports the advancement of technology and innovation within Durham region across Ontario and throughout Canada. Synergy Lab provides international entrepreneurs with a specialized programming and the services to support their transition to a Canadian business and help them grow and scale. I would like to ask Sherry and Nova, Sherry Calburn and Nova Oliphant from Synergy Lab to come on this stage.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Sherry. This is Nova. I just wanted to start off speaking to you all today. Let me start with a thank you to Mansouri for inviting us to this conference. We're from Ontario, so probably worthy of note. We are not from the BC area, although this certainly gave us a great opportunity to come and visit friends and family that are here. So our story begins with a bit of a backdrop. Synergy Lab is actually a sister company to Spark Center, and Spark Center is one of the designated entities under the Startup Visa program. And back in 2012, I was a serial entrepreneur, had spent decades in the tech industry, and took an opportunity to move to the Middle East. And I lived in the Middle East for 4 years. And while I was there, of course, an entrepreneur has a hard time kind of sitting still, particularly when you've got all these great ideas in your head. And so I decided to start another business in the Middle East. And what I learned from that experience is while it's difficult to start a business in your own country, it is exponentially more difficult to do so in a foreign country where your cultural norms are not necessarily aligned. Certainly your language is not aligned. And so there's a ton of things that you need to learn, both the things that are spoken as well as those that are unspoken. And so it's a very challenging route to get into, a business when you're in a foreign country. Fast forward 2016, 2017, I took over the helm of the Spark Center as the CEO. And what I was keenly aware of is that there were a lot of really wonderful entrepreneurs all around the world who would love an opportunity to come to Canada. And Canada needed those entrepreneurs. I think Carrie spoke to it very eloquently this morning. Foreign entrepreneurs are so integral to Canada's growth. And the amount of hustle that they bring to our country is truly awe-inspiring. So I'm now at the helm of Spark. I'm dealing with a lot of local entrepreneurs. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could support international entrepreneurs and kind of infuse that energy into our own local economy? We applied for Startup Visa. We got our designation. And we started down the path of really calling out to world-based entrepreneurs to come into Ontario. And the first cohort that we put on a program for were from Brazil. And these guys were, they were fun and worked hard. I think out of the 6 companies that came in that cohort, 5 of them are now living with us in Ontario and enjoying a wonderful life and creating phenomenal businesses, very leading edge technology, mostly specific to the autonomous services, so electrification, autonomous cars, and what have you. So great entrepreneurs. What that then really taught me, though, as I watched them grow and evolve, was that we needed to do something much more at scale. And I think Hamid spoke to it. Scale is everything in the entrepreneurial world. And as a serial entrepreneur, there's tons of ideas. And if you want a lifestyle business, that's fine. But that does not qualify under the startup visa. You have to have a scalable business. And so what we look for when we are looking at entrepreneurs coming through the front door of Synergy Lab is entrepreneurs that have grit, hustle, a great idea, and something that's immensely scalable. And if you've got those kind of 4 elements, then, we will take you in with open arms and kind of teach you the ropes. So in 2020, on the heels of the beginning of the pandemic, we thought it would be a great idea to spin out a new company, because why not, right? When you're in the pandemic, what a great time to do that. Anyway, we had always done in-house cohorts where people actually came from their home countries and they lived with us for a month, and we kind of created this wonderful community for them. So the pandemic hit, we had to do it through Zoom. Zoom is, it's good for a lot of stuff, but it's not really a relationship builder. But in spite of it, we took all of our programming online, and I'm going to let Nova speak a little bit more about that. One of the other things that we did at the Spark Group of Companies is we created this initiative called the Eastern Ontario Innovation Corridor. And the reason we did that is because if any of you know anything about Toronto, you'll know that there's this amazing corridor in Toronto called the Toronto-Waterloo Corridor. It is literally Silicon Valley of the North. They spin out all kinds of incredible companies. The issue in Eastern Ontario, where we're from, we're in the East Gateway of Toronto, is there wasn't the same amount of momentum and buzz and or supports for entrepreneurs. And so when we were receiving these international entrepreneurs into our incubator, the challenge was, how did we really support them to become very, very successful? And so I used my network and the network of some of my colleagues, and we built this initiative called the Eastern Ontario Innovation Corridor. And really what it is a collaboration of innovation hubs, investors, VCs, every industry partners, all who come together, academic institutes, who all come together with the idea of supporting the entrepreneurs who are coming into our region to make sure that they get their feet down and they have a real community to live in. So I'm going to, with that, turn over to Nova, and she'll tell you more about Synergy Lab and how we do things there.
Thank you, Sherry. So we help international startups navigate the Canadian market. That's what we do, and it relates to what Sherry was saying. It is a challenge. They are coming from a new place to another new country, among new peoples with new innovation and ideas. And how do they help to navigate? Most of the times, English is a second or third language. That in itself is a barrier. Other times they are time zones different. Iran is probably 8 hours ahead. So how do they connect with their customers when they're not even on the time zones? So Synergy Lab has helped more than 250 companies gone through program from over 15 different countries. And we're very proud to say at least 150 female founders. So most of the clients that we're assisting, they're considering bringing a new business to Canada. We also have a second bucket of clients that we help where life is good back home. They're not looking to immigrate to Canada, but what they're looking for is to penetrate the North American market. Again, they still need access to market in order to get to their customers. So through workshops, advisory services, one-to-one mentoring, introduction to industry experts, we're able to help these companies scale and grow and drive some business growth. And I want to speak to the word success, because you may think, wow, what did you do with 250 companies? The word success at an idea stage is really equals to traction. So someone with an idea who has moved on to build in that MVP, and that is a form of success, that is traction. That MVP that's now seeking validation, that is another form of success. So we're not saying we produce 250 unicorns, but we're helping companies at different stages. We have one company from China, Long and Vision, 3 students that were here from McMaster University. They created a helmet for firefighters, so when they enter a room, the firefighters wearing the helmet, they can see the smoke, they can detect a body, a physical body from a furniture, and even more, the officer back at the office can see through that VR set, through the lens of the firefighter. This company made a lot of traction. We introduced them to firefighter stations in Ontario. They pilot 10 different, with 10 different firefighting companies. And just from those pilots, they received more than 8 letters of interest. So that is success. No, they haven't made any sales, but just to validate your idea in a Canadian market and go beyond that. So we work as of date up to, I believe we're up to 17 different countries. The participating countries we've worked with, Iran is our number one, Hong Kong, China, and Brazil. And then we've worked with others, Nigeria, Libya, Egypt, Ethiopia, India, Bangladesh, Thailand, and also Taiwan and Japan. So we've had experience working with a lot of different cultures. And prior to COVID, when they came to Synergy Lab in person, there's nothing to replace that. Even though we run our programs virtually, we sort of missed that in-person tune, because when they were here, we could show them the region. We could show off, this is where you live. Earlier on, I was saying to Sherry, happy wife, happy life. You know, people are considering coming here to do business, but part of our programs also speak to the family life. So what settlement services do you have? Because if I'm here running a business and my children and my wife aren't happy, chances are we're going to end up leaving either the province or the city. So part of the programs that we provide is connecting with the economic development in our region, and also all these different newcomer services. So perhaps your spouse wants to go back to school to learn English. What are the opportunities that are there? Perhaps they need career advice on counseling, right? So it's getting them engaged into the community so that they could see the community is welcoming and they're actually service there that's available to them once they arrive. So we work with advisors, experts. We are not the experts, they are, but this is how we help companies to drive growth. Our advisors have expertise in growing and scaling business beyond 1 million in annual revenue, and they work with company in key sectors. Some of these key sectors are agricultural technology. We work a lot with the E3, which is environment, energy, and engineering. Most of our projects are coming out of health and life sciences, which is why earlier on you saw Queen's University. They have an active engagement within the EOIC to support any healthcare medtech products coming through. We also work with advanced manufacturing and materials, information technology and digital media, and of course, because of Durham region, obviously we love anything clean tech or agri-tech related. So our elite partners, that we work with as well. I'm not sure why this isn't.
Blame Rogers.
Some of our lead partners are corporate legal experts. Earlier on, you mentioned don't try to incorporate on your own. Try to figure out what are the advantages and disadvantages of incorporating federally versus provincially. So we have legal experts that meet with them, including intellectual property. They want to file out about patents, about trademarks, what that looks like in their startups. We also introduce them to financial and banking experts. Most of our clients are able to open Canadian business bank accounts from back home. And then also cybersecurity. We now have that is becoming more popular now with our startups because of what's happening in the cybersecurity world. So I wanted to give you an example of a growth story, and I think this company probably will resonate with you. They are from Iran, and it's a team that was founded 4 physicians and IT experts. And they developed a game-based, it's a sort of a virtual reality device that uses AI, VR, and artificial intelligence to enable stroke patients. So when we met them in November 2019, their challenges, obviously like everyone else, they're unfamiliar with the Canadian market and the ecosystem. They're trying to look at their go-to-market strategy. And we thought, what a wonderful product and project and innovation they came up with. So through advisory services, we asked, so who's going to pay for this? And they said, well, the patient. The patient suffered from the stroke, and this is the device they're using. And we said, oh no. In Canada, we don't want to pay for anything, not even after a stroke when it comes to healthcare. So let's pivot a bit. You need to get this as a medical device, as a software for medical device. So we're going to need to do a lot of clinical trials to really validate what you're saying, that a client or a patient could use this from home, do their own exercises, and that a physiotherapist or a cardiologist would validate that this is good to go. So Sherry made introductions, and the team to University of Toronto and McMaster University, they started clinical trials right away. They also started clinical trials in Tehran because they're still back home. So again, the challenge of innovators coming up with something great, but the go-to-market strategy was incorrect, and now they need to pivot. And that one pivot, we talked about that in the business plan. It changes everything. Now the advertising strategy, you've got to tweak that, your marketing strategy, even your value proposition, because now you're not going to the end user. You're trying to go to the physicians and the doctor. So great company that has made traction, and we have many stories like these. But now, within 2 years or so, they've been doing a lot. And Spark recently, I think a few months ago, featured them in our Brave New World magazine. I know they've won a couple of internationals award. And this is just one of the success story of an innovator with a great idea going to a new market, but doesn't really understand the market. And if he didn't understand it, they would have wasted a lot of time and money going down the wrong pathway. So I want to talk a little bit about our programs. We have quite a number of programs, and I'm not going to get into them because Hamid is already aware. But I want to talk about how we specifically help companies through different stages. So if you come to us in an idea stage, yes, we're still able to help you. We are going to insist that you do market research. Because again, market research will validate desirability at an idea stage and viability. So if you've created this pen, are people in the Canadian market looking for this pen, and are they willing to pay $20 because that's what you assume? So the business plan, we understand, is an ever-changing document, but at least at an idea stage, we want to put them in the beginning on the right track. So through these programs and services, they get one-to-one mentorship and advice from a legal expert and industry expert in their area of expertise that can talk to them about, barriers or any organization associations to join or any legal or FDA compliances that they should know before they start building that MVP. And while they're doing market research, perhaps that's going to come back to your MVP. If you're building a product with 8 features that you assumed a client is looking for, and now with the market research, they only love 3 and the others are nice to have but not needed and not willing to pay, now you saved yourself a lot of money. So we only work with those companies who are going to validate their idea, if that's what they're sitting at an idea stage. And for the ones that come to us that are ready to go to market, we can help you as well. So the point I'm getting to, it doesn't matter your stage, it doesn't matter if it's pre-revenue or not, because of our customized program and services with different advisors, we'll be able to help you move along. So I want to talk a little bit about the BMC. I just want to bring it up lightly because it relates to market research. So we help them through different stages, putting those pieces together. And this is where the experts come in because of the language barrier. When they're ready to go to market, they may have all the information because it's their idea, but they really don't know how to put that in writing into a questionnaire, into a survey, and to get it out to their customers. And so they may not even have the courage to speak to customers because, again, it's a language barrier. So we encourage our startups to hire someone, if it's even fractional sales, that can start business development here on the ground, whether you're here in Canada or not, and they can make this traction on your behalf until you get where you need it to be. Sherry, I'm going to talk to you a bit about cultural nuances. We had one of the companies that came over in 2019. They just received their permanent residence last summer from Iran, and they're here now. And I said, I want to hear it through your lens. So when you came to Canada, what were some of the things that you found abnormal? And what are some of the challenges? And he said, well, from day one, when we got to Spark Center, Sherry, the CEO, made a speech, and then we saw her walked off to the kitchen and she washed her own mug. And we thought, why is the CEO washing her own mug? Like, why don't you have someone to do that? You know, we're from Iran, where people are there just to make your coffee and bring it to you. And so we created a cultural workshops because we realized there are things that are unspoken, and perhaps it could affect your business relationship if you're not careful. So part of our program includes Canadian Business Workshop, and we get to learn a lot about the internationals, and they, in return, get to learn a lot about us. So earlier on today, I said to my daughter, when you think of Canada and Canadians, what do others say about you, or what comes to mind? So Dione, I'll get you to yell that out. Tim Hortons. Yeah, snow and maple syrup, yeah. And I don't know what ideas you have when you hear about Canada, but again, it's that cultural norm, the spoken, the unspoken in the business world. We soon found out that Iranians don't show up after lunch because they like to take extended lunches. We would have a 1-hour lunch and they would show up after an hour and a half, and we're like, okay, we got to move. What happened? Oh, but we had to have tea after lunch, and all these excuses are like, guys, it doesn't work this way. When you have a meeting, you have to show up on time. If you're talking to a new customer, that could make or break you in this world. But I understand they were coming from a culture that's more relaxed, and people would just show up 15 minutes, half an hour late with a coffee and think it's okay when it's sort of not okay here, right? So
Yeah, I often tell the story when I first was living in the Middle East. Of course, I'm kind of on North American cadence, so kind of hustle, hustle, hustle. And I would, book an appointment for 10 o'clock in the morning, and I would arrive, of course, at 10 to 10, because you need to show up on time. And I'd get there, and I would ask for the receptionist to let me know, where to go. And she'd say, well, we'll show you into the boardroom, but, Mr. So-and-so, he's not here yet. And I'm like, okay. 15 minutes later, Mr. So-and-so walks in, everybody's very happy, we're sitting down, we're talking, we're talking about family and community. That takes about 15 minutes. And then the tea boy comes in, and he would ask everybody, okay, would you like coffee or tea? Would you like some little snack? That's another half an hour. So I was starting my meeting at 10, but my real meeting starts at 11. And so you have to build in that kind of, it's a cultural nuance. Sherry, living in the UAE, can't change that cadence by myself. I can't just demand that because I showed up at 10 o'clock, everybody's going to be there. This is not my country. So you quickly learn how to adapt to the cadence of the country you're in. And so, what it taught me was, don't book meetings from 10 and 11 and 12. You book one at 10, probably one at 1. You might get another one in if you're lucky. But it does give you a sense of hands-on first world experiences with how to adapt to different cultures. And because I've had the luxury and the privilege really to have been in the tech industry for decades. I don't want to age myself, but I just did. I also didn't, it wasn't just the Middle East that I traveled to. I traveled to Europe. I've lived in, California. And as you travel and move around the world, every culture has their own subtleties, their own nuances. And, the hard way to learn it is to trip into it. The easier way to learn it is to have a community of people around you who are aware of what you don't know and can provide you with that insight so that you don't make those mistakes yourself.
Great. And because when we speak about the Spark Center group of companies, I find people are not really sure of what's the difference between Synergy and Spark Center. So maybe you can expand on that a
Sure.
bit.
Yeah, so Spark is one of the regional innovation centers in Ontario, funded by the provincial government, strictly 100% focused on local entrepreneurs. But in my mind, maybe because I've had so much of an international experience, I felt that that was really a missed opportunity for our community to attract very smart innovators. And so we created Synergy so that we could do that. I could not do that under my provincially funded organization. And so like the startup mindset that we're always looking for, when you hit a barrier, what do? You don't take no for an answer. You figure it out, and that's what we did. We said, well, we can't do this under Spark because it's not permitted. It's not a permitted service. So let's create a for-profit organization that operates independently and can provide these services that we well know but could not provide under the regional mandate. So that's how it came about, and because I'm the CEO of both companies, so there's complete alignment between these companies. There's no mismatch where different companies sometimes have different mandates and they can kind of go this way. Since I'm actually running the whole group of companies, there's perfect alignment between all the companies. So it really makes sure that the entrepreneurs that come to visit us through Synergy Lab get, white glove service all the way through the process.
Mm-hmm. And we've had, when Synergy started, it was sort of like a feeder program to get to Spark. And because Spark is a startup visa designate, that's truly the only way you work with internationals. But on the Synergy side, we saw that we were turning business plans away because they were not good for Spark under SUV. And we thought, but wait a minute, they're good for the region. So Synergy also branched out and pulled away from Startup Visa and wanted to work with other programs that support different business immigration pathways just for that reason. Not everyone's going to come over on Startup Visa. Perhaps they want to buy a business. Perhaps they want to enter through the PNP or the C11, like you mentioned, and there's a due diligence that has to go with that. And the team recently came back from Ireland, and we discovered, there's this greater market out there of we don't even want to immigrate to Canada. We just need your programs because your programs is going to get us North American customers through that market validation. So we've sort of spun out away from Startup Visa, not really away, but wanting to create other business immigration programs that can support entrepreneurs coming here as well. Earlier on, you talked about the EOIC, which is the Sparks initiative. We have this pool of clients that are coming in from all those letters of support that you've issued, and I'm happy to talk about community partners and how they help all these internationals with the different landing pads. And what we've learned is it takes a village. It's not just us. All this success is because we work with the economic departments, or our clients pitch to them so they know the projects that are coming through. We work with the academia, so the universities and college that can help with pilot and testings. So perhaps we could use Kavares, because I think that's a good example of an international coming through, but using Spark to leverage the different arms along the EOIC to get what they were looking for.
Yeah, so we had another, this was a company that came to us on our very first Brazilian cohort that I mentioned earlier. A gentleman by the name of Joel. He runs a company called Kavares. Kavares is a municipal services business that's based on the use of autonomous vehicles. So if you think of sidewalk inspections, which are of course required legally in Ontario for sure, these little rovers can go out with all their cameras and their AI and completely take a digital twin of the city and then specifically look for whatever the service is that the municipality is looking for. So sidewalk cracks, that are above the legal limit, which they then need to go repair. This little device can do all that. Kavares is a great example of how the Eastern Ontario Innovation Corridor supports entrepreneurs. So he arrived at Spark and developed his concepts. We, through our connections with all the economic development folks, introduced him to them because they are, in fact, his customer. And they started dialogue. He started to understand more about how the municipal services work. They're, I mean, it's a government entity, so there's an RFP process. They have to have 3 quotes. I mean, it tends to be a kind of a long lead sale. That was something he did not know. He thought that he was going to sell this like he would to a private entity, and that the decision would be made 6 weeks, and now everything's good. No, not. I mean, he started working on a pilot with our local city of Oshawa economic development folks, and a year later, he finally is doing that pilot. So extracting a ton of information from speaking to the customer. But over and above that, down in Kingston, Ontario, we have Queen's University. We introduced him to other areas of Ontario. And what that allowed him to do was so Queen's University, there was a certain amount of research that had to be done in developing this AI platform. And guess what? They have some professors there that are robotics experts. And so they applied for some research grants, which got him, expert post-grad, students who then started to work and develop the technology for his platform. The city of Kingston is providing a pilot to him, just like the city of Oshawa. And so it's really through this big network that we've created that rather than sit idle while he was waiting for the city of Oshawa to bring about some business for him, we just started to take him out to the different landing pads around Eastern Ontario, and it kind of expedited his sales traction, because now he's not just dependent on one city to run a pilot. We got him out into other areas of the community. And that's really the goal of the EOIC, is to really help entrepreneurs get the traction they need more quickly. It's kind of a white glove introduction service, to put it in simple terms.
And this is going to tie in nicely with the last question, which is, why do you prefer to support companies that are willing to live and do business in Eastern Ontario? And I know, Hamid, we've always had that discussion where if they want to go to BC, don't even introduce them to us. So maybe you can clarify that.
Sure. So you can imagine when you're doing work like this, we are in very close partnerships with our economic development folks, with our universities. And they want to be able to benefit from the supports that we put in place. And so really it's a immigration at its core is an economic impact initiative. It is a way of improving people's regions for the better. So that's why we are really only interested in entrepreneurs that wish to come to Eastern Ontario. We've put all the supports in place. And I think what we have, and I feel like I can say this, I'm Toronto born and raised, I have family in Vancouver, I have family on the east coast of Canada, I've lived all over the world. So, the reality is what Eastern Ontario has, we don't have the weather that
Definitely don't have the weather.
We have snow, unfortunately. But what we do have is we have a very affordable, easy, accessible, community-based culture in Eastern Ontario. And I think when you're a startup, one of the things that I learned really early in my entrepreneurial career, your monthly burn is what will make or break you. You have to be lean in order to survive. And so, not having to pay thousands of dollars for rent for your home, or thousands of dollars for rent for where your office is. This is all money that you can keep in your business and use for the benefit of your business. So if I had to sum up Eastern Ontario, I would say it's a very strong community-based area of Canada. And we are Canadians after all, so we share that common politeness and welcoming behavior. But it's very affordable and very livable, and
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Hamid.
Thank you, Sherry and Nova. Very interesting and helpful. The next speakers are from MTA, MTA is Manitoba's premier technology commercialization organization, focusing on helping disruptive technologies reach early customers and then scaling the business. Its team has experienced success growing business ideas into global companies. MTA has recently expanded their service offering and expertise to provide international entrepreneurs an opportunity to move to Canada through the Startup Visa program. I invite Marshall Ring, the CEO of MTA, and Sydney Fifa, the Manager of Business Development of MTA, to please come to this stage.
Well, thank you very much. And before we start, I would just like to thank the Mansouri immigration firm. It is just great to be here and able to see people in person after a long hiatus from being able to develop interpersonal relationships. So I hope I'm not too rusty. I haven't been giving too many presentations recently. So, and before starting, I'd also like to thank all of the presenters and the people participating in the conference. As our first speaker, Carrie, said, Canada needs immigration for us to continue our economic future. So just by everybody's participation here, by the comments you've made, by raising awareness to the importance of immigration and to the fact that we're so dependent on it, more activity like this will help highlight that awareness, keep the engagement going, and drive our country forward. So my name is Marshall Ring, and I'm responsible for the Manitoba Technology Accelerator for, maybe not everybody knows, the province of Manitoba. That means I am from sunny, wonderful Winnipeg. So Sydney's going to come up in a little bit and speak about our Startup Visa program. But first, I am going to give my objectives. Number one, I want to talk a little bit about MTA. I love my work so much, and I just hope I can share a little bit of the passion that I have for what we do with the people participating in the conference today. Number two, I want to specifically present on MTA's Gold Standard Startup Visa program. And number three, I know it's a bit competitive now, I want to make this the best 45 minutes of your day. That was pretty good 45 minutes before. That was a pretty good 45 minutes before, but we're going to give it a shot. And we've got a lot of similarities. So just in terms of the words we use, like market validation, right? 5 smart people in a dark room building something nobody cares about. So I think actually it was wonderful to see in your presentation and having some alignment with how we grow companies as well. So about MTA, we are a private sector but not-for-profit business incubator, and we are governed by a private sector volunteer board of directors. So we have John Clarkson from the Ontario Brain Institute is a member of our board of directors. We've got venture capitalists from Minneapolis in the United States, and a number of people from Winnipeg. MTA has 3 business units, and part of what I want to communicate today is MTA in general and how we build and commercialize technology companies so that hopefully people can see the alignment to how we do that with our Startup Visa program. So in business unit number 1, which is our commercialization business unit, similar to Spark, we would work with Canadian companies that are trying to grow and scale. Then we also have developed MTA Investments and want to communicate a little bit about how we directly invest into our client companies. And then third, I'll invite Sydney to the stage, and Sydney can speak specifically about our Startup Visa program, how we operate, and hopefully there's a fit with some of the people in the room to participate with that. So, on commercialization, so the MTA Commercialization Business Unit, I always like to define commercialization and make a bit of a distinction between commercialization and innovation. So to me, commercialization is the art of making money from innovation. It's not innovation. It's not coming up with a great idea. It's taking that great idea, turning idea into a product that customers and consumers can give you money for, and making money from that innovation. We, in our business unit, we do not focus on the founders. We're not interested. So one of the simple analogies I use is if you're trying to build a house, you're going to need an electrician, a plumber, and a carpenter. Well, it doesn't make any sense to try to make a plumber and turn it into an electrician. What we want to do is we don't want to take a founder and make them experts at QuickBooks or accounting systems. We want to surround that disruptive technology with a team. So we want to put in plumbers and electricians if this person coming to us is a great carpenter. So we don't do lunch and learns. We don't try to make someone great across the board, but with little depth. We also, through our intake process, we always want to validate investor and customer demand. So Another simple analogy I would use is if you've got a car, and maybe this example is becoming antiquated with the advent of electric vehicles, but a car is no good if it doesn't have gas, right? It just sits on the driveway. So we want to know that if gas is, in my example, investor money, if we've got to drive companies forward and they need investment capital, what we immediately do is we socialize the concept to our investor group. And if there's no traction with the investor group, then we know the company is not going to be able to acquire some capital to start moving it forward. So we say we might not be the best fit. Similarly, what we want to do is we want to go out and what we call them as XYZ letters. Go talk to, and we use the pen example all the time, go talk to people, possible customers, and say, if I can build this thing that works, how many units would you buy? What product features, attributes do you need to build into it? And at what price would you get it for us? So we want to start validating the idea in the hands of customers and consumers based on the value propositions we have. And we might find out that instead of having a blue pen, they want a black pen. So we integrate those features, attributes, and benefits from the market into our product development process, and we start driving companies forward. So assembling people and putting them into the highest and best use is really what we're focusing on, surrounding this disruptive, innovative technology with people that can help scale it and bring it out into a global company. Who we work with, we're really good at, and I know the term isn't used that much anymore, but we're really, really good at working with people in the valley of death. So on a financing term, what happens is someone comes up with an idea and then usually they can bootstrap for a little bit. But then when they start needing to find angel investments, oftentimes the founder doesn't have a track record in building a business. They're still a little bit too risky. So it falls into the valley of death where a lot of ideas die because they cannot get capital. So what MTA does is we do a couple of things. Number one, we lead with our chin. We directly invest money into our startup companies. Number two, we apply our management skills and our management teams to help mitigate the management gaps that startup companies have. So now when we start going to external angels, they know that we're already in, they know that we're putting our people in, that we've solved management gap, and they know we've already validated this into the market. So we're starting to mitigate risk and solve that point of the valley of death. From there, there's opportunities for more structured financing to come in once the company has early traction and a management team. So what we do in terms of our values that we give, propositions we give to our client companies is we are an incubator, if you use the term, providing space. So think of us like a fancy Starbucks. We've got really good coffee. We've got really fast internet. We are on Bell, so the thing is up today. And we have an entrepreneurial environment, which is, I love just walking around the office and we hear people building companies and some of them are saying, here's the problem I've got. And then someone else says, you know what, here's what I did to solve that problem. We're really active at building culture. So Sydney's also in charge of growth and culture at our team. So monthly lunches, we have our teams present. We give so many test runs for our teams that they get to be in front of situations like this and speak to people and they start learning and they give feedback out. And we got such a wonderful community that comes to our community engagement events. And we have people who want to help our clients in a practice setting so that when it's time for the real thing, we've got them tuned up, we've tinkered with, we've got the feedback, people know how to respond to questions. So facilities and infrastructure, but really it's culture that we help with startup clients. And then on the business program, the accelerator side, we mentor, coach, and participate as a second area of value. So on the commercialization business unit, so again, that's the one business unit we're talking about right now, there's about 15 portfolio companies that we have, and I sit on the management team for all of those companies. We also go out into our community and we find a CEO mentor, someone who has the skills, expertise, and the track record, a brand name in the space that people are trying to commercialize their technologies. They sit in on the management team. And we apply a very rigorous commercialization pathway. So we will take people in at different stages. Our commercialization pathway starts at idea, feasibility, development, launch. How we work and help the clients depends on the stage they come in. But we do take clients in at the idea stage and we help them early. So that is both applicable to the commercialization stage as well as to our SUV clients. And then the third thing on the commercialization side is we never want someone to have a great idea but not have money and have them robbed from the opportunity to chase their dreams. We love entrepreneurs. We want to help them. So we will actually take convertible debt for our services for some clients who don't have the money to pay for services that they might otherwise find. So we are in most cases the first and earliest investor into all of our client companies. Further, the idea of us taking convertible debt into clients really aligns us to the success of the client. We're not just charging them, $200 an hour to sit down and talk with them. We only get paid when our clients are successful. So a joke that I use, and I don't know if it's culturally appropriate or not, apologies again that this is my first time speaking in 2 years, but there's a joke that I'll sometimes say is the difference between a chicken and a pig in the eggs and bacon breakfast. So the chicken is involved, but the pig is committed. So sometimes it creeps and takes a little bit to get there. But so we're like the pigs in this relationship. We are really, really invested into our clients. So key business model features of Manitoba Technology Accelerator on the commercialization business unit is active hands-on participation in the management team. We're part of the team. We do convertible debt for services. That lets us work with great technologies and provide our services, and we never have cash as an encumbrance that stops people from chasing their dreams or for us wanting to help them to chase their dreams. And number 3 is we're really focused on building companies. We're not particularly focused on building entrepreneurs. We are focused on building companies. So here's just a couple of the companies that we've helped with, and sort of the most famous one is the Skip the Dishes story. So Josh came to us with 2 employees, and we were with him from the growth of 2, actually, I guess 1 employee because he was the other dude. So it was those 2 guys, and then we were involved all the way through to the exit. So flying to Toronto for the boardroom meetings, turning down $2 million, $20 million offers, and just helping guide that company. And what's fascinating now, and this comes back to the growth of our community and how growing companies can be a really powerful tool, is all 5 of those founders are back into their second or third startups. They're reinvesting the earnings. They're reinvesting the management skills they've learned. We're transforming the economy and the landscape of Winnipeg based on innovation and commercialization. So on the strength of that, I now, when I speak to my board, I tell my board that I have 2 commitments. So I have 2 commitments to my city. Number 1 is I want to build more $100 million companies out of Winnipeg. And number 2 is I want to make Winnipeg the startup capital of Western Canada. So they're ambitious goals. Actually, on point number 1, I might be sandbagging because we've got how many we want to build by a certain time frame, and we might be a little bit ahead of pace. Things are going very well at technology commercialization in Winnipeg. So we spoke, if you remember that financing curve, it looked like the red line was a J curve, right? So you start, you don't lose any money, but you might need to invest $200,000 or $2 million before you hit a point of inflection where you have an unfair competitive advantage that helps your technology scale and grow. So you should have exponential growth when you're building technology companies. So this is the aggregate value of the companies that we've been working with. So, and again, this isn't just through, hey, we rent them some space. This is us sitting on the management teams. So last year, the clients that we helped grow did almost $750 million of revenue out of Winnipeg. And so that next year, that number, and this isn't an aggregate number, this is year in, year out. Next year, the clients that we helped grow will do over $1 billion out of Winnipeg. So I hope you see these J curves. I hope you hear the passion I have for starting and growing and helping companies, and we're pretty good at it. And this is just payroll. So we're at about $200 million of payroll into the client companies over the past, at the last year. And again, just J-curve growth. So we're focused on these disruptive, scalable companies. We're focused on putting management in place and capitalizing them so that they can succeed. I want to now talk briefly about the second business unit we have at Manitoba Technology Accelerator, and that is MTA Investco. At this point, I should say, the Manitoba government has recognized, that's our provincial government, the Manitoba government has recognized we don't have enough venture capital. So about 2 months ago, the Manitoba government announced a $50 million venture capital fund, and I am the interim fund manager for the $50 million Manitoba Venture Capital Fund, which was just launched, and I'm in the process of deploying. We are more focused directly with MTA on our pool of angel capital. So we do 2 levels of investment directly from MTA into our client companies. And this is applicable to our SUV client companies as well. Number one, if someone's got a great idea and we like the cut of the jib and we like their passion and they're ready to grind it out, we got $25,000 for them right off the hop. So if someone needs some money to go get an MVP, we want to be there to help. What we do with that as well is we leverage that. We've got a great relationship with IRAP in our area, and we can turn that $25,000, which is held as equity, we can match that with $50,000 from IRAP. So a company that we want to work with, if they're at the idea stage and we think that they've got a chance to go, we can immediately infuse $75,000 of capital to them, put in place myself and a CEO mentor onto that team, and immediately start building an MVP to go after the clients that we've identified. As they go from idea to feasibility, then they move into development. So we might have our first 2 customers lined up. We then have the ability to do development level investments. So again, I will directly invest up to $400,000 into our clients. On top of that, my rules that I'm governed by my board of directors are that I have to find matching angel capital to go with that. So we have an investment group called the Manitoba Knights. Usually within 10 days, we find the matching capital once we say we'll put our money in. So that really means that we can get into about the $1 million range for the development level investments. And after that, we segue into the VC fund where we find the $1 to $3 to $5 million. So we've now got a nice continuum of access to capital that exists in Manitoba. So I just wanted to take a moment to speak about MTA, how we help build companies, a little bit of our success that we have with that, and we've taken that model and we've now applied it to the Startup Visa program. So the model we have for our Startup Visa program is applied against the platform that we've had success with in the commercialization business unit, and the tools and the infrastructure are there to help client companies. So with that, I'd like to invite Sydney up, and Sydney's going to speak. Sydney is our Manager of Business Development and will speak a little bit more about the Startup Visa program. But as introductory comments to the Startup Visa program, MTA is designated through their R3 levels. I heard earlier, venture capital, angel, and business incubators. We are a designated entity through the business incubator stream. If you go online, you will not find us as MTA, though. You will find us as Biomedical Commercialization Canada, Inc., doing business as the Manitoba Technology Accelerator. So there's probably 14 minutes of my allotted 45 with that tagline. But and our focus is on attracting startups and scale-ups from around the world. Currently, we have about 500 clients. We have a pretty efficient system, and we've continued to grow. So, Sydney, if you want to just, I'll click for you. You can.
Sure, thanks. Okay. Thank you, Marshall, and I'm pleased to have the opportunity to speak about MTA's SUV program. As Marshall has mentioned, my name's Sydney, and I am the Business Development Manager here at MTA. Over the next 10 minutes or so, I want to communicate the following key features to our SUV program. So first is our intake model and screening process. Second is the process of acceptance. So our program fees, and I know that's a point everyone's usually interested in hearing about. The third will be once a client's accepted into the program, how do we provide services for them? And then lastly, our graduation package. Okay, so it's my hope that at the end of my presentation, everyone recognizes why MTA is considered the gold standard for SUV programs. Okay. Marshall and I also have some time saved up at the end, so hopefully we can have an interactive Q&A going for a little bit of time. Okay, so what makes our intake process and screening process so special? We want to have it quick, defendable, and consistent. So therefore, we've standardized our application package. This will include an application, a 2-page business plan, and a 5 to 10 PowerPoint slide. We typically focus on businesses that have an innovative idea, can create jobs for Canadians, and can compete on a global scale. These are also some requirements of the IRCC for the SUV program. So we then apply a triple due diligence screen to the application before we accept the client. This is like our own internal peer review process to make sure that MTA applies a rigorous due diligence. The first screen is done by me. I look at the files to make sure they meet the IRCC criteria and are strong enough for me to recommend they move to a second screen. Our second screen is a formal review by a volunteer third-party screening committee. So this screening committee consists of various industry associations. So we've got government people, we've got researchers, lawyers, and people in finance and accounting. The screening committee will either recommend MTA to accept, reject, or we may have some questions that will circle back to the applicants in hopes to strengthen their application. So the third level in our screening process is if the client is recommended for the approval, MTA will then work to match that company with a business advisor. So if the company is not as strong, it cannot get the business advisor champion, and MTA, it will not get a business advisor, and MTA will hear about the shortcomings for the business. So we'll end up rejecting them and asking them to maybe reapply in the future. So next, I want to talk about our acceptance process. So if the applicant is recommended by the screening committee and a business advisor is willing to accept the client, we'll then issue a contract for this client, which is valid for 60 days after being accepted. If the client returns a signed contract within the first 3 months and pays the 3 months of client fees, MTA will then make the introduction to their business advisor. An important point that I want to highlight is that speed is one of MTA's competitive advantages for our startup visa program. So once I make my initial assessment about the suitability for an applicant to go to the screening committee, we then will have a response back to those applicants within 21 business days, with whether they're accepted or not, or whether there's questions from the screening committee. So from their initial intake to being screened and then having an outcome, it's 21 business days. So once they sign a contract with MTA and they provide us with the first 3 months of payment, we can then issue the letter of support within 48 hours. So we can therefore go from application to letter of support within 30 days of a project that has been vetted and endorsed by a third-party screening committee, and which can also be referenced with the IRCC when they review the applications later on. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to pause and talking about the process and talk about what a lot of people really want to know. What does our program cost? So our fees are based on the size of the team. So with the Startup Visa program, you may have up to 5 applicants on each team. So the prices are listed here. So for a one-person team, we charge $2,100, and this contract runs for 18 months. For each additional person that is added to the team, the program fee will increase by $500. So the max someone's going to pay for a 5-person team is $4,100 per month. Oh,
we're trying to slip that in and see if anybody picks up on it. So.
Those are for additional services. For example, if a 3-person team. For a 3-person team, the total would be around $55,800 for the term of the whole program, 18 months, or $18,600 for each individual person on the team. Okay, we can go back to process now. Oh. Yeah. So once in the program, clients will receive one-on-one business advisory services with world-class business advisors who educate clients on how to do business in Canada and also move clients along to MTA's commercialization pathway, which Marshall had spoken about earlier. The amount of hours for these clients on each contract depends on how many people are on the team, and it goes from either 5 to maximum 13 hours. So for a one-person team, we offer 5 hours of advisory services per month, and then for 5 people, so it's 2 hours for each additional team member, so 13 hours in total. And if they wanted to add additional services, we can always increase those hours as well and adjust the contract. So the business advisor will also be completing monthly status reports every month showing client progress. This is something that Hamed was talking about earlier, where the IRCC, they want to see that the people are actually involved in the program and they're actively working on their businesses. So we are very great at showing them that, and yes. We do also have some a la carte services, which we can...
We get graduation?
Oh, no, never mind, we're going to talk about graduation. So this is the last of the sections I wanted to touch on. In terms of graduation, After that 18-month term contract, MTA will send a formal graduation client package to clients, which will include a graduation certificate, a compilation of the monthly status reports that I was just speaking about, which are prepared by the business advisor. These are also fully auditable by the IRCC, and they show the progress and efforts that are made by the client. Okay, so we also have some additional services. We call them a la carte services that we can provide to the clients according to their needs and their interests. For example, something that I am able to do is work with an internal champion at the IRCC to do status check-ins to see if the files are moving and if there's any update on their work permit or their PR. People find that very, very helpful, especially with these processing times and how they've been varying because of COVID. People are really, really interested in this service. The second is an embassy advocacy letter, where we encourage the embassy to issue work permits. Okay, so to conclude, the elements of our program that ICs and clients really like are the 3 levels that we do for screening. So 2 are internal or external. Speed, so like I mentioned, 30 days to get our letter of support. That's really, really great for these startup visa program clients. We have a fully auditable monthly report to demonstrate to IRCC activity and engagement, and then, of course, our one-on-one business advisory services.
Thank you, Sydney. So just concluding the formal presentation, hopefully what we've been able to impress on you is that we build disruptive technology companies that can scale nationally and globally. We do attract startups and scale-ups from around the world. We can deal with someone, a file that starts at the idea stage, or even into companies that are already at growth stage. And we do have a fully auditable SUV process from application through graduation. A couple more key points that it struck that we should have included in the presentation is when clients work with us on the SUV side, many of them stay in their home country, and our one-on-one business advisory services can be delivered virtually. So some clients don't even ask to apply for work permits, so they're with us for the 18 months, and then once our time is over, we find that clients drop off, but then when they do come to Canada, they do want to start re-engaging and working with us. But because we have the ability to apply our program virtually, we can work with clients who aren't yet in Canada, and there is no obligation that they do come to Winnipeg. So as a homer, I wished everybody had to come to Winnipeg, and I remember sending a note to IRCC saying, we're putting this contract on MTA letterhead. You know, it's not fair that they can choose to go to Toronto or Vancouver. And so the IRCC said, Marshall, stop being such a homer. This is a national program. This is a group of immigrants that we want in Canada, and you know, you're gonna have to get over your love for Winnipeg if you want to be in this program. You can't force people there. So, while we do our very best to make people want to come to Winnipeg, we can deliver our program virtually while they stay in their home countries, and they can live anywhere in Canada except for Quebec with the process that we've started. So, I think with that, our hope was to have comments and questions from the floor. Hopefully we've given enough structure and process that, number one, gives a touch of the level of excitement that I have for what we do to the members of the audience, and that there's opportunity for some engagement and conversation. So hopefully there's some questions. Yeah.
Thank you. I have multiple questions, so I'll start with one, and then if there's time, I'll go with another one. So thank you for the presentation. I do understand that there are multiple layers of service that your company provides. However, that would be very specific to our case, which would be immigration. Now, you mentioned 2 things. First is a standardized application, and then how your intake application would look like. I would like to understand, do you provide services for the client to basically present that business plan that you're looking for in that application, or that 5 pagers of the PDF that you want, or no, it's another, basically, another company has to be retained to provide that for application?
Can I answer that one first, and then you can go to your next one?
Yes, go ahead.
So one of the things we are very mindful of is we never want to write our own applications and then adjudicate the validity of those applications. So all we do is we look at applications. There are consultants who will help clients write business plans or write the application process. We stay well clear of any of that. We want to maintain our integrity of reviewing applications. And so if people say they want help writing it, sure, we've got consultants that we think do a good job, who understand the process, who don't have to go through the learning, right, so that they are less expensive than if someone has to just learn for the first time. But we will not write them, but we will refer you to consultants who could.
Okay, got it. And then the second part would be, you did provide information on that 18 months, basically training process. Now, and my understanding is that that would be after a letter of support, accepted in your program, letter of support has been issued. Now, that 18 months does not correspond with this 33 months that is
The wait time, that's correct. Yeah.
the processing time. So
Why 18 months?
So what is, why 18 months, and how do you cover that gap?
Yeah, so when we started this program, I can repeat it, sure. So our program is 18 months, but sort of processing time looks like 33 months. So why is the variance between 33 and 18 months? And when we started this program, processing times were maybe about 16 months. And we didn't even have any terms on our agreements. It was just, you're in it until you get PR. And then this time lag started going, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is unfair to the clients. Like, nobody's going to sign up for 33 months of like an indefinite requirement. And then who's going to quit the program after spending 22 months in the program, because then you lose all your progress. So we said, why don't we just go back to our original vision, which was we think 18 months. That should be plenty of time for us to help clients. And you know, it's not a sprint, right? It's a slow relationship building. It's helping build some infrastructure and some relationships, helping people understand how to do business in Canada and how to validate their market and build MVPs. So we figured 18 months was a very fair cutoff point. What we're finding is a lot of clients then say, after 18 months, can we stick with you guys for 2 to 3 months, or 2 to 3 hours, like a reduced fee, but just to keep contact and just to show that, like, keep some momentum until they get PR. So, but at 18 months, we consider a client a graduate, a client in good standing, and we continue to support their process with IRCC. We're not here to say someone's got to sign up with us for 33 months.
Thank you for your explanation. Now, I want to understand whether, so I saw, so then there comes when the process is this long and you would have to basically keep the business ongoing,
Yeah.
then it comes the question of, funding and whatnot. And I'm thinking, you have multiple layers of organization. I just mentioned that if they come to Manitoba and start it and it's viable and whatnot, you would infuse funds. So would you consider infusing funds to those over, not exactly Canadian businesses?
Like, I'm a bit of a homer. And one of the tenets of angel investing is you invest into your backyard so you can see how the companies are doing. So I think the best way to answer that question would be a case by case. I'm not going to make a blanket statement of who we'd invest into and who we wouldn't, but we're opportunistic investors.
So it won't be a blank no, that because these businesses are not yet basically been approved to become a permanent Canadian business, you're not going to consider to allocate funds from or venture capital. Any business that is, whether the entity is still a foreign, not entity, but the holder of that entity still.
The question you're asking me, I'm going to reposition how you ask me the question so I can be a better position to give you an answer that you want. Is there a way that working with MTA or through MTA's Angel Investment Network, companies who are not in Manitoba can receive investment capital? So what I've done is I've changed your question to, will it be MTA versus can I help companies who are not in Manitoba get capital? And if I can help companies who are not in Manitoba get investment capital, yes.
Thank you so much. It was a great presentation and information. I really appreciate it. My question is regarding your SUV program. Is it possible for your client at SUV program to use investment program too? If yes, how they can apply for that?
Yeah, I think that was similar to how I was trying to scratch out with this answer. So it may or may not be directly through the MTA SUV investment program, but we're actually investing into a Vancouver company today for about $50,000 who is an SUV client, but not in Manitoba. but that's not direct through MTA.
Sorry, if there is no question, can I ask one more
Of course,
question?
yeah.
So the name suggests that you are basically active in biomedical, but it's not. It's just a name. You're not. You don't have
Yeah.
any preference
We're-
into what type of businesses you would accept or consider.
We would be deeply skilled into medical devices and diagnostics, but we do not do biopharmas or vaccines, and we are then also skilled in advanced manufacturing, clean tech, all the other sort of knowledge-based economies. We were started by the federal government as a not-for-profit organization to focus on biomedical, but then we've added other sectors to the process.
Oh, hello. You mentioned about the matching funds. Is the matching fund equity or debt?
When I mentioned about
You mentioned the development
On the-
kind of funds.
the feasibility, yeah.
Percent kind of 50% matching. So is that also debt? Or is it
The 25 is equity, and then the 50 is government grant, non-dilutive.
Okay.
We're gonna talk over lunch, okay?
Yes.
Hi, and thanks for your presentation.
Thanks.
I want to ask about the 18-month your tutoring. What happens if MVP is going to fail, and what happens if a startup fail during 18 months? What do you do in that situation?
Yeah, we don't always guarantee that a company is going to be successful, because, startups, there's all different outcomes in startups. You never know. But we're going to equip you with the right tools, the right people, to help build your business and help navigate the Canadian market in the best way we can. So our business advisor, if you're accepted as SUV program, we'll match you with a business advisor who's passionate and excited about the type of business that you are offering. And they're going to be industry experts, and they're going to do everything they can to help you build and scale.
And then I think, just to add on to that, my understanding, and so I'm not an immigration consultant, we never want to get in the space of immigration consultants, we stay in our lane, but if it fails, I believe IRCC is most interested in, did you try? So we want to show that, so if I'm making up a number, a client put in $200,000 of their own money, they did everything they could, but sometimes the technology just doesn't work because these are risky businesses. I don't think you get held to account for failing. I think you get held to account if you do not try. And we'll do everything we can to help you not fail or look for some, pivot changes on building the MVP. But I think it's measuring effort is the most important, not outcome. And we, of course, try to have a good outcome, but that can't be guaranteed. I showed you some good clients up there. I don't have the list of the failed skunky ones, but that slide would be 5 times as long.
Thank you.
Or come find us over lunch or throughout the day, and we're happy to.
We have also a few questions online, so
Oh,
they
okay.
were
Oh,
asked.
perfect.
Sure.
Yes. As can we change our marketing strategy after we applied for PR?
Yes.
Yeah, you bet. So even on this, right? So when you start going out to test for the market, you've got a good theory, but you might find out maybe competition has come in. Or there was a great comment earlier today about going to, instead of charging a CapEx, doing a SaaS model. So you're always going to be tinkering with marketing and pricing, and I think even established businesses always tinker with that.
Another question is, my sister lives in Manitoba. Can she pay for my program fee?
We should go for lunch with his sister. Like, come on, this is awesome. Yeah, she can pay for the program fee, absolutely.
Yes. And the last question
Where's that
is-
question from?
Someone.
Oh, okay.
Anonymous. Is your office open for in-person services?
Yeah. Oh shoot, I've got. I'm gonna see. Maybe. I hope that I do it. Nope. We just got Winnipeg's most iconic building. There's a building that spans. Whenever you see pictures of Winnipeg, it's this building that you see on the promotional material. So it's, I think, the only building. I'm gonna make an absolute overstatement and maybe a blatant lie, but I don't know if it's a blatant lie. I think it's the only commercial building that that's on a bridge. So I can't drive my car to work. I got to park my car, or I ride my bike in, and I got to walk across a pedestrian bridge. But we're right beside the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, and so we've got this giant spear bridge. And so we just launched it. We're transforming it into a a showcase, so it's going to be a technology and digitally rich environment, which is going to normalize world class in Winnipeg. So when people walk into this space, so we were just actually, we put about $250,000 of technology into it. So that is our networking and event center. And then we have about 30,000 square feet located, I don't know, 5-minute walk away in Winnipeg's Exchange District. And we got a hub of activity there. So we've got probably about 200 people milling about building stuff and building companies. And then, as said, Sydney manages the culture and the lunch and learns. And so our building, we welcome people, we encourage them, we'd love them to come. Come join our RNG. Where's that? All right, good stuff. We'll start talking Charleswood, I hope.
There he is. All right,
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the attention and the questions. We're going to, of course, be here for lunch, and we'd love to have a follow-on conversation.
Thank you so very much. It was very, very interesting, Michelle and Sydney. Okay. Marshall, actually, I'm sorry. So now it's the 45 minutes lunch break. I would like to request all our guests to move forward to the lunch place, lunch area. Lunch boxes are ready for you, and I hope you enjoy it. And we'll come back and resume here at 1 o'clock. Moving forward, our next speakers are from DMCL, Dell Matheson Carr Hilton Labonte, LLP. DMCL is a full-service accounting firm. They have 30 partners and over 250 team members across Vancouver, Surrey, Tri-Cities, Port Coquitlam, and Victoria. Working with DMCL means having access to diversified team of expert advisors that view every day as an opportunity to contribute to the success of their clients, solving costly problems, building long-lasting relationships, and always striving for excellence. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Travis and Marcus.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I feel a little bit like a celebrity walking up the long path there. And everybody can hear me all right? I've never been told to speak up. It's usually quiet down a little bit, so let's just make sure this is working. Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for coming and listening to us on a Friday afternoon. I thought I would start off by just saying a few jokes. The first one would be we should all take our phones out. This is probably the only session we'd ever say this. And just turn your volume up as high as possible because nobody's going to get a phone call this afternoon. Rogers is still down, so apologies for that. And I also wanted to just talk a little bit about Canadian culture. We are known to apologize, so I'd like to apologize for not only the phone disruption, but also for the wonderful weather we've had over the last few weeks. I know it feels like the middle of the summer, but in all seriousness, hopefully we'll have a little bit better weather here in the next few weeks, and we can all enjoy a sunny summer. So I'm not going to talk too much about our firm because already there's a wonderful introduction, but I would just say that DMCL has been in the British Columbia community for over 30 years now. We have an office in Vancouver downtown, just a couple blocks from here. We have an office in Port Coquitlam, an office in Surrey, and we have an office now in Victoria, and we've been open in Victoria for a few years now. So I'll just get right into it. We're going to try and give a nice overview of a number of different matters that might impact you and your business. We're going to talk about corporate taxation, family trust, partnerships, some different structures, some tips and traps, tax rates, and things like that. So I will get right into it, and we're going to have a good opportunity to have some questions and answers at the end here. I suppose I should just give a quick introduction about Travis and I as well. We're both newer partners here at the firm. We both work in our firm's private enterprise group. So we work primarily with private companies, partnerships, high net worth individuals, startup companies, and do the full range of tax planning. We also have a regulatory group that deals with companies that are either going public or that are already publicly traded. We have a full service tax group as well that can assist with complex tax matters locally, internationally as well. Right, so we're just going to get into our first slide around corporate taxation. So wanted to just go over, the traditional types of structures that we see, corporate structures we see in Canada. We have what are known as Canadian-controlled private corporations, which is exactly as they're defined. They're corporations that are controlled by Canadian residents. A lot of people, when they come to Canada, they ask, well, do you have to have permanent residency in order for a company to be considered a Canadian-controlled private corporation, or do you need to have citizenship? The answer is no. A Canadian-controlled private corporation is one that's controlled by a Canadian resident for tax purposes. And being a resident for tax purposes is not necessarily the same as having a work visa or having PR with the government or even being a citizen. You have to meet a number of tests. Oftentimes the tests relate to how long you've resided in Canada for and whether or not you have ties to another country. But if you have a permanent home in Canada, if you have a job in Canada or a business in Canada, even if you don't have PR status, you could still incorporate a company and be considered a Canadian-controlled private corporation. And there's many benefits associated with this type of structure, which is why it's number one on the list here. A subset of a Canadian-controlled private corporation is a professional corporation. These are often considered to be limited purpose corporations, and they have a separate set of regulations. Usually, we have the British Columbia and the federal regulations, of course, but then depending on the profession, you may have regulations. If, for example, you're a doctor that has moved to Canada and you want to set up a medical practice and a medical corporation, there are separate regulations which limit the type of business that you can run within that corporate structure. It also limits who's the voting shareholders. So oftentimes in a professional corporation, the professional has to be the primary voting shareholders. You can't necessarily have a child that's a voting shareholder, for example. Then we also have general purpose active businesses. So that's your standard business that operates, a clothing store, a pharmacy, and these companies all, if they're Canadian-controlled private corporations, they benefit from the tax advantages associated with them. Then we have passive businesses, which are oftentimes incorporated as well. And these types of businesses are generating passive investment income, which could be things like having a portfolio, stock portfolio that's generating dividend income, or it could even be a business where one is generating rental income. There are several different thresholds that we look at as to whether a business is considered passive or not. One example would be when we look at rental income. In Canada, usually a business would be considered a passive investment business generating rental income if there are less than 5 full-time employees working for the business. When you have more than 5 full-time employees in a rental operation, you would then be considered an active business, which is again subject to better tax rates, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more. And then there's other private corporations, and these are very typical in Canada as well, where there's oftentimes large shareholder groups where there might be shareholders out of the country. And so if the shareholders control, if the primary shareholders control less than 50% of the business, it's considered to be an other private corporation. Again, not subject to the same tax benefits as a Canadian-controlled private corporation. And then, of course, we have publicly traded corporations, which are subject to different tax rates, but also different regulations from national regulators. Right, so just going into tax benefits of the Canadian-controlled private corporation. There's a number of benefits, and we look at Travis and I look at this with a tax lens. There's also a number of legal reasons why one would consider the corporate structure, and I'll leave that to the lawyers to discuss. So we're mainly going to talk about the tax benefits. Number one would be tax savings through income splitting. And so one way to do that through a corporate structure would be paying salaries to a spouse or salaries to children so that the shareholder doesn't pay tax at high rates, and that can be done fairly easily through the corporate structure. There, of course, is documentation required if you are allocating salaries to a family member. Generally, we recommend that an employment agreement be established, even if it's with a spouse or a child, so that if the Canada Revenue Agency asks questions about the salaries that are being paid, that you have documentation on file and you have a list of duties and you can explain what they're doing and how they're assisting you with your business. One other way to split income would be to distribute after-tax dividends to family members. The rules, unfortunately, have become more complex over the past few years, but I think the most important takeaway today is that if a family member is actively involved in the business, there usually are not as many restrictions in terms of paying dividends as when you are trying to allocate dividends to a family member that's not actively involved in the business. And there's also restrictions as well with children who are under the age of 25 or under the age of 18. So we do recommend that if you are thinking about having family members as shareholders of your company, that you seek accounting advice and tax advice as to how best to structure this type of business and how you can distribute and split income with such family members. This can be done through a corporation or via a family trust, and we're going to talk about the family trust structure shortly as well. Probably the biggest tax benefit associated with a Canadian-controlled private corporation is significant tax deferral. And what tax deferral is a delay of paying tax. And what we usually look at is, can we delay paying tax as long as possible? And the private corporation structure allows us to do that. And effectively, in a corporate structure that's a Canadian-controlled private corporation, the first $500,000 of taxable income is taxed at 11%. And we do have full corporate rates that we'll show you a little bit later in the presentation. But that's a very significant benefit. If you're running the same business as a sole proprietor, for example, the top bracket's now 53.5% in British Columbia, which is the combined federal and provincial bracket. So there certainly is a deferral advantage. You're left with 42.5 cents more on every dollar that your business can use to reinvest. Now, of course, you will pay tax when you draw funds out of the corporation, and that's where the rates get higher. But while you're building up your business, it's much better to have the money rather than have the government take 53.5 cents right off the bat. The other benefit, of course, is being able to smooth income. So when you do want to start drawing dividends or salaries out of the business, you can certainly do that, but you don't necessarily have to do it in the same year that the company is generating the income. And therefore, you can smooth the income and pay lower tax over several years. The corporation also allows for business owners to claim deductions that might not be able to be claimed personally on a personal tax return. There are several examples of that, and either they are tax deductible or not necessarily tax deductible, but what would be cheaper to claim that deduction through the corporate structure. Otherwise, an individual would have to pay using after-tax dollars for the same type of expenditure. One example would be medical expenses. Medical expenses that are run through a corporation, when we do the flow-through of the funds coming in and going out, it's a lot cheaper for medical expenses to be incurred through a corporation. Same thing with life insurance. As long as the life insurance premiums are paid through the corporation and the beneficiary of the life insurance is the corporation, it's generally cheaper to pay for life insurance through the corporate structure. Another example would be Canada Pension Plan contributions, which would otherwise be required as a sole proprietor. There's not generally any way around it unless you are over a certain age threshold. You can choose whether or not you want to pay for the Canada Pension Plan when you have a corporate structure by deciding to pay dividends as opposed to salaries, for example. Dividends are not subject to Canada Pension Plan contributions. And just for those of you who are not familiar with what these contributions are, they're approximately now 6% of income up to about $60,000. The amount changes every year, it's inflation adjusted, but that's a fairly large chunk, and there's actually two portions of it. So there's an employer portion and an employee portion. So if you are running as a sole proprietorship, that could be a 12% tax hit on $60,000, up to $60,000 of income. So if you don't want to contribute to the plan, you can do so with a dividend structure. We've already talked about about funds being kept in a corporation and the ability to claim the lifetime capital gains exemption. This is something that is only for Canadian-controlled private corporations. This exemption is available when you go and sell your business. And if you have a corporate structure and you're considered to be a qualified small business corporation, which is a type of Canadian-controlled private corporation, it's one where you're primarily running an active business and don't have significant amount of passive assets within the business. So if you're running a clothing store, you're running a pharmacy, you're running a clinic, that would be considered a QSBC, a Qualified Small Business Corporation. When you go and sell the shares of that business, the first $900,000 of gain on that sale could be free of any tax implications. And that's, again, only available for a Canadian-controlled private corporation. It's a very, very significant advantage. So another really good advantage of that structure. And then, of course, there's estate planning considerations, which we don't have to go through in a lot of detail today. But the idea is that if you are a multi-family business or multi-generation family business, and you want to pass the business off to a family member, but want to preserve some of that value for yourself for your retirement and pass the future growth to your children, you can do so through the corporate structure by doing what's known as an estate freeze, where you freeze the value of the company at a point in time, and any future growth would then attribute to a family member. And there's a lot of planning that can be done there. Also, considerations around claiming the lifetime capital gains exemption as well. So there's a lot of planning that us as accountants can do to help as you're looking to have a long-term plan with a family member. So just a quick example here of income smoothing. One thing that we look at when we talk to folks about whether they should have a corporate structure or not is, what your income flows are going to be. And we see this typically in businesses where income can fluctuate. So a good example would be real estate, where the markets really drive what oftentimes a realtor will generate. And if you have a corporate structure and you can smooth income over several years through a corporate structure like this, you can have actual savings that are very, very significant, and it's just because of our rate system. We have a bracketed rate system where, as your income increases, the tax rate that you pay increases. So it's not a flat rate system. So there can be significant benefits, even though you're generating the exact same amount of income over 2 years. If you flow it out over those 2 years through a corporate structure, you can generate some significant tax savings, whereas you have no opportunity to do that as an individual. As an individual running a sole proprietorship, the income you generate, you have to pay tax on regardless. I'll quickly talk about family trusts. We oftentimes use family trusts as a tax planning tool. They're oftentimes used as a flow-through entity, which means that they are, in and of themselves, not subject to tax, but they're used primarily to help with control. So if a family member wants to have their children involved in the business in some way, shape, or form, but doesn't necessarily want them to control the business operations, a family trust can be used. It also allows for discretion around distributing income. You might have several children, and you may want to distribute income to them in different ways, depending on how active they've been involved in the business. Using a family trust allows for a lot of flexibility in terms of income distribution. And the family trust would be set up as a shareholder of the corporation, and then the corporation would flow a dividend to the family trust, and then the family trust has discretion to allocate that income to beneficiaries. There are, again, like we talked about earlier, rules around the types of distributions that can be made to the beneficiaries. Depends on, again, how actively involved they are in the business. But if they are actively involved in the business, which would often be the case, then there's less restrictions. If the income is passive in nature, there are less restrictions as well. So if you're running an investment business where you're generating passive investment income, this is a really good structure to consider. And it can also be used, and we don't have this note on the slide, also be used to multiply the lifetime capital gains exemption on the sale of a business as well. So family trust structure is a really good idea to put in place. I'm going to pass it off to Travis to talk about partnerships and a few other items, and then I'll come back here near the end. Oh, sure, I can go. Yeah, Travis got a good point. I can just go through the corporate structure. We had this slide out of order, so I'm just going to skip through a few slides here. This is a good example of a structure that we typically use at our firm, where we have a voting shareholder. The circle is going to be an individual. There's a family trust that's a shareholder of the business. There's an operating company that's established. The operating company has been very successful, has generated lots of excess retained earnings. The operating company flows those retained earnings to a holding company, and that's done for several reasons. One reason is for liability protection. You don't want to have passive assets sitting in an operating company. Someone comes and sues you. But the other reason is what we've been talking about earlier, the ability to claim the lifetime capital gains exemption. In order to be able to claim that exemption, you can't have significant passive assets in your operating business. So what you want to do is you want to flow it to the holding company. The holding company generates investment income, passive investment income, and it flows that investment income up to the family trust. Then there's very few restrictions on the family trust being able to then distribute that passive income to shareholders, to beneficiaries of the family trust. So this is a very, very typical structure that we like to set up, and having a structure like this in place can certainly save a business a significant amount of tax. All right, I'm going to move back here. Did you want me to talk about the structure as well in the family trust? Well, I'll go back. That's okay. All right, passing it off to Travis here for a few minutes.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Can everybody hear me? Good? Yeah, unlike Marcus, sometimes people do tell me to speak up, so just want to make sure. Next thing we're going to talk about here is partnerships, which is another structure that you can essentially have to operate. So a partnership is often set up as a separate legal entity, but is not taxed. And the reason why it is not taxed is all income is flowed through to the partners. In these cases, these partners get a T5013 slip, which is a statement of partnership income. And the partners can be individuals, corporations, or trusts. There's a couple of ways that you can set up partnerships. One is a limited liability partnership, or LLP, where all the partners share in a portion of the liability. And another structure that you can see is a limited partnership, where essentially one partner, called the general partner, shares the majority of the liability, while all the other liability is limited to their investment for the other partners. Over here. So why would a partnership be used? You might be asking. A limited partnership structure is appealing to investors who don't want to share in the risk beyond their financial contributions. We often see this in large-scale construction projects with many investors where they pool their investments to complete a project. Another time that we see this in is a limited liability partnership, and it can be more flexible than a corporation because it can be easier to add and remove partners. The most often time we see this is actually with professionals who work together, so accountants like us or lawyers who form a partnership in order to service their clients. Another advantage of partnerships is the partners have more flexibility to determine what they want to do with their income, because again, all the income flows through to themselves, whether it be a corporation or themselves personally. What I want to get into next is sole proprietorships, which Marcus briefly alluded to before. This is the simplest form of establishing a business, and essentially no corporation is set up. You essentially operate as yourself. One of the drawbacks of this potentially is there's no liability protection beyond your own personal insurance. And one advantage of this is actually that, it will depend on how you operate, is that there's no separate tax filing requirements, so there's less compliance. So from an administrative standpoint and a cost standpoint, this could be beneficial. And as Mark has already mentioned before, there's no ability to smooth income like with a corporation. So all the income that you earn in a taxation year, when it is earned, is taxed. So you may not be able to avoid high rate tax in a given year, which could be a disadvantage depending on what type of industry you're operating in. There is also less deductions available, as Mark has already alluded to. Sometimes we're on life insurance and you're limited on the medical expense claims. And there's no way to limit the Canada Pension Plan contributions, which is our national retirement fund. So that kind of covers the sole proprietorships. So what we'd like to get into next is just a little bit of additional filing requirements that is good to be cognizant of. The first being pretty basic, business licenses. So these may be required based on your jurisdiction or the industry that you're operating in. And also, if you're a professional, there may be additional professional licensing requirements. For example, us as CPAs, we have to be licensed with our governing body in order to operate. So another big one that we want to talk about is the BC employer health tax. So this applies when remuneration exceeds $500,000. The rate of the employer health tax is 2.925% of BC remuneration in excess of $500,000 all the way up to 1.5 million, and it's 1.95% of remuneration when it exceeds 1.5 million. And for this, there is annual filing requirements. Something else we'd like to make you aware of is WorkSafe BC, which is essentially is our provincial employee insurance plan, and it essentially just covers coverage for workplace injuries. It is required for most businesses that have employees, so essentially if you have employees, it's definitely something that you need to be aware of and have to be paying premiums for. The rate is really dependent on the business type, so it's based on your industry, it's based on your claim history, and it's also based on your assessable total payroll. So that could vary, quite significantly. And again, there's annual filing requirements as well. Next up is GST and PST. So I'll kind of go through these quite quickly. I'm sure some of you are already aware of these. At the federal level, we have GST, which is the sales tax that applies on the provision or sale of goods or services. Some of these goods and services are exempt or zero rated. Some examples of exempt goods or services are healthcare services, childcare, educational services, zero rated being groceries, food, prescription drugs. The rate is 5%, and the reason why we have HST up there as well is, certain provinces have combined their provincial sales tax, which we'll get into in a second, with the GST, which results in the harmonized sales tax, and this can result in a sales tax of up to 15%. Registrants are able to be credited for a GST or HST that they pay on expenses. So essentially, what you collect versus what you pay in GST can result in either a payable or a refund. And these filings are due either monthly, quarterly, or annually, depending on your situation. At the provincial level, we have the BC provincial sales tax, which has a rate of 7% on eligible goods and services. The difference with PST versus GST is there's no credit for PST paid on purchases. One caveat to that is, though, if you purchase goods for resale, there is no PST on that as well. So if you are registered for PST and you go to a supplier with your registration number, you should be exempt. And just like GST, there is filing requirements that could be monthly, quarterly, or annually. And next up here we have payroll. So if you have employees, you're required to remit source deductions on their behalf. This includes income tax, CPP, and employment insurance. One thing to always remember here is that you also have to pay the employer portion as well. For CPP, the employer portion, which is also a business expense, is 1-to-1. So if you have $1,000 in CPP withheld on a employee, the employer portion is also $1,000. And for EI, the rate is 1.4. So same thing, if you have a EI withheld on for an employee of $1,000, the employer portion is 1.4, so $1,400. Tax reporting for this must be prepared and provided to all employees by the last day of February each year. And we just want to get into some important deadlines to remember. We're going to start off with the corporate deadlines. Pretty basic here. So corporate tax returns are always due 6 months after the year end. But more importantly, if you end up owing any tax, those are due either 2 or 3 months after year end. For CCPCs, so Canadian Controlled Private Corporations, which Mark is referenced to, they actually get a 1-month extension, so their taxes are always due 3 months after the year end of the company. Payroll reporting, like I just mentioned, is the last day of February each year, and that's the same for dividend reporting, so T5 filings. Payroll remittances, the most common is 15 days after year end, but this can really depend on the amount of remittances that you have, so it could be a little bit shorter. And PST returns are due at 1 month after the reporting period. So. Next up, we have some deadlines for the personal side. So personal tax returns are due at April 30th or June 15th every year. The June 15th deadline actually applies to people who report business income on their returns, so they get a little bit extra time. The really important thing to note here is the actual tax payment deadline, which still remains at April 30th, whether you have a business income or not. So it's always really important to make sure that you have all your stuff in order before the deadline so that you can avoid any late payment interest, which is non-deductible for CRA. Similar to the corporate side, payroll reporting is also due at the end of February each year. And GST returns for personal are generally due June 15th. The payment is still due on the 30th. And yeah, same with the corporate side. PST returns are due 1 month after the reporting period as well. So I'll make sure we have enough time for questions at the end. So, so next up, Mark is going to go through a little bit of tips.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We just have a thanks, Travis. Just going to go through the last few slides really quickly because I think everybody has had enough listening to us and want to ask some questions. So I'll just skip through here if I can. Oh, I think we're frozen. Here we go. Corporate tax rates. So we talked about CCPC rates being 11%. So that's correct up to the first $500,000 of taxable income. The rate then goes up to 27%. For a non-Canadian controlled private corporation, again, earning active business income is 27% regardless. And then we've got some rates around investment income, capital gains, and dividends from Canadian corporations. You'll see here, I've got several notes, so you'll see, as an example, if you're a Canadian-controlled private corporation, you're generating investment income, that's a very high tax rate of 50.7%. But you'll see when you look at the note that 2/3 of that, so 30% of the 50%, is considered refundable. And that tax is refunded when the corporation pays a dividend out to the shareholder. So what the Canada Revenue Agency and the Department of Finance is trying to do is trying to encourage corporations to distribute the income that's being generated from passive income to the shareholders, rather than having a company having an quote-unquote unfair advantage over an individual generating the same type of income. And so as we flow that income out to the individual, the corporation receives what's known as a dividend refund from paying out a dividend, and then the ultimate tax rate to the corporation in this example would be about 20%. So we have a system that I haven't talked about it in too much detail, but we have an integrated tax system, and that idea is that whether or not you're an individual or a corporation, you should be paying the same amount of tax ultimately as that income is flowed through to an individual. Where there's benefits with the corporate structure, as discussed before, would be through income smoothing, through distribution to other family members who might not be in the same tax bracket, and so on. But if you are simply generating income and flowing the entire amount out in the same year, there should be no tax differential. And so this type of structure where we have refundable tax helps achieve that. And this is just a quick rate table. I'm not going to talk about it at all, but this is our tax bracket system. So you'll see that the tax rate's quite low on the lower thresholds of income, and as we get higher, up to $227,000 for this year, that's where the rate gets up to above 50%. So what we try to do when we tax plan with our clients, and again we can do this as best as possible with the corporate structure, is we try to smooth income to keep the individual level below the top income threshold so that we can not pay tax at these high brackets. And again, the corporate structure allows us to do that. I will leave it at that. This is Travis and my contact information. We also have business cards which we're happy to give out. We're going to stick around at 2:30 for the break. But more importantly, I think now is the time for questions. So please grill us with your difficult questions.
Hi, thank you so much for your information. My question is, if we consider that one person have a personal like real estate corporation, and based on that, we do have a code for collecting GSP. If the corporation is not that active, should we report it to CRA, or there will be any charges or fee against not reporting that?
Well, that's a great question. So we didn't talk about the GST requirements in terms of thresholds. So if a business has income below $30,000 a year, and the income that it generates would otherwise be subject to GST, you don't need to register for a GST account. However, once you are registered, as long as you're registered, you have to file GST returns. And so you could, if you decide, the company's not going to be active for a number of years, you could choose to deregister for GST. And once you filed your final GST return, you wouldn't need to file until you exceed the threshold again. But I generally advise to stay registered and to file because, again, as Travis mentioned, the company will receive input tax credits or a refund on the GST that it pays on its purchases. So as a personal real estate corp, you're spending a lot of money on marketing, you're spending money on materials, you're driving to and from your clients and you're incurring, vehicle expenses. All of those expenditures are subject to GST. You can claim all of that GST and receive a refund even if there's little to no revenue in the company. So I think it still is advantageous to do so. And registering and deregistering is actually a fairly tedious process. So I wouldn't decide just to deregister just because you think it's going to be inactive for a few years. I would stay registered and have the benefit of those refunds until the company becomes active again. Why don't you take this one?
Thank you. And my question is about the filing period and the deadline. What if you pass the deadline? Is there any penalty? Is there any other activities you have to do?
Yeah, absolutely. The filing deadlines, so if you happen to miss a filing deadline and you actually owe tax, that's when the issue is. So if, say, you were to owe tax at a filing deadline, and essentially, I'll get right to it. There's a 5% late filing penalty if you owe tax, and then on top of that late filing penalty, there's also interest on the balance that you owe. It becomes less of an issue if you don't owe tax or have a refund. Essentially, at that point, there is no penalties. But we still always tell you to file for compliance purposes, because what happens is if you file consistently late for, I believe it is 2 or more years, and eventually if you were to file late down the road, that 5% penalty actually goes to 10%. So compliance is always very important, even if you owe tax or not. But essentially, yes, there's late filing penalties and interest on any balance owing as well.
If you register for the GST at the middle of the year, can you claim the credit of the GST for the few months before the registration for the same fiscal year or not?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. This is something that happens quite frequently with our newer clients who aren't aware of the GST requirements or weren't sure if they should register or not. There is a process to do that, and it's fairly straightforward. What you need to do is you need to send a letter to the Canada Revenue Agency indicating when you started generating revenues and show that you've charged GST on some of your sales going back, fairly far to as far back as you want to start claiming the input tax credits. So that's one way to do it. So, for example, we deal with clients that start charging GST but don't have a GST number. They just start doing it, and as long as you can show the CRA that you were actually charging and collecting GST, you then can claim the input tax credits. By default, you can go back a month without sending any letters to the CRA. So when you call and do the registration, which we help our clients with, you can by default go back at least 1 month. So in short, the answer is yes, you can generally go back and claim the input tax credits. Where the CRA might deny those claims is if you had no revenues and are now trying to claim credits going back to a period when you weren't running the business and generating revenue that would otherwise be subject to GST. There are some things that we can do to try and claim GST going back as far as possible, but I would recommend registering as quickly as you can and at least going back that 1 month, because you can certainly do that without any issue.
I say that there is a bit of time left. I would like to just talk about a little bit of differences of benefits of life insurance on the corporation versus the individuals.
Yeah, I think you actually deal with this a lot more.
Yeah.
More recently, at least.
Yeah, so I deal with this all the time. Do you have any particular questions, or do you want me to just give a bit of a general overview?
Just a general overview, and then go with the items that the benefits of doing that.
Yeah, so when an individual purchases life insurance, they purchase life insurance with after-tax dollars. And so if you're running a business and you have to take salary out of your company in order to pay for life insurance personally, that's expensive because you're using after-tax dollars, and you have to then take out more money out of your corporation for your other everyday expenses. Whereas if you have life insurance set up as a deduction of the corporation, and the corporation is the beneficiary of the life insurance plan, you're using after-tax corporate dollars, not after-tax personal dollars. So you're only paying 11% tax, and then you're using the corporate bucket. So you're not having to take the income personally before you buy the insurance. The corporation can use its funds for it. You don't necessarily, in most cases, you don't get a tax deduction at the corporate level, but you're using corporate funds that you would otherwise need to pay tax on personally. So that is by far, one of the largest advantages. But where the largest advantage is with the corporate structure is this concept of the capital dividend account. And the capital dividend account, which we didn't go through in any detail today, is, again, it's a function of our integration. We have a system where in Canada where half of our capital gains are subject to tax, and the other half is not subject to tax. And it's the same thing with the corporate structure because of integration. When you have a life insurance plan and the corporation is the beneficiary, once the corporation is, let's say if the primary shareholder passes away, which is why we have life insurance in the corporation receives a large payout from the insurance company. And a significant portion of that payout goes into the capital dividend account, which is then tax-free. So again, we're using the corporate structure to pay for the insurance premiums, so there's a huge advantage there. And then we get another advantage by the fact that there's this capital dividend account created from the payout of the life insurance. So having this type of structure in place can be very, very beneficial. The other primary advantage is that oftentimes life insurance is structured as an investment vehicle. So you have life insurance, which is also generating investment income. That investment income is often taxed much more favorably than if you just have an investment account personally. And it has to do with the way the tax rules work with life insurance policies. So oftentimes even using life insurance as an investment vehicle can be a very good idea at the corporate level. Because again, you're not, you saw the nasty tax rates at 50%. Life insurance, that same rate of income doesn't apply to the income as the insurance if it's built into an insurance plan. So there can be certainly a number of advantages. We work very closely with insurance advisors when we set up insurance plans with our clients. We don't do the insurance ourselves as an accounting firm, but we work with advisors to ensure that structures like this are put in place and work to our clients' advantage, especially if you're looking at estate planning and life insurance can be a very big piece and a very big key in an overall estate plan. I hope that provided, I don't want to go into too much detail, but is that enough context?
Thank you very much. Yes.
Great.
So far, so good.
Okay, good. I know it's Friday afternoon. Nobody wants to hear too much tax talk, so I'm happy to answer any other questions, but otherwise we're going to be sticking around and happy to chat and answer any other questions. But thank you so much for being a good crowd. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Very useful. And we had also a few questions online, but they were actually answered through all your questions. So I don't need to go through all of them now. Empower Startup is an innovative startup incubator headquartered in Vancouver, British Columbia. With offices and worldwide network of innovators, they train, mentor, and network entrepreneurs to successfully launch innovative business in global markets. Empower Startup is recognized by the Canadian government as a designated startup business incubator, the Alberta government as a designated agency for the foreign graduate entrepreneur stream, and the lead incubator in Portugal's HQA visa program. I would like to ask Mr. Sean Olsen to come to the stage. I'll get that for you.
Okay, cool. Thanks. All right. Hobble my way up. Perfect. Thanks. Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much. I am a bit of a loud talker, so I'll try to keep this away from the mic so you guys don't get your ears blown off. It's been a long time since I've been at an actual seminar. This is kind of cool. So long, I actually forgot to wear pants. So used to Zoom calls where you can just kind of wear shorts all day. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about empowered startups and what we do, and focus mostly on the startup visa program and also the foreign graduate entrepreneur stream. First off, I'm Sean Olson. I'm the VP of Business Development. I work with partners all over the world and entrepreneurs all over the world that are looking to use our programs to launch businesses and immigrate. So to start with, we'll just go a little bit into empowered startups. So when I first joined Empowered, we were largely focused on Canada. In the last 3 or 4 years, though, we've truly become a global incubator. We have a presence all over the world. We are running programs in the EU, Portugal and France specifically. We have an EB2 National Interest Waiver program in the United States, offices in both of those locations. And we also are still running the Startup Visa program and have expanded our Canadian offering to the Alberta Foreign Graduate Entrepreneur Stream. That's also expanded our footprint a little bit to ecosystems and innovation hubs and universities and research and development all over the world. So one of the things that we're very proud of over the last 3 or 4 years is that we're a growing company. We were actually named last 2 years consecutively as one of the top 400 growing companies in Canada. And that growth, not only in Canada, but around the world, it serves as a benefit to our entrepreneurs because that network and the interactions that we have across the globe are also accessible to our founders. We also work with, as it says up there, over 450 startups since our inception. And that is, again, across transnational, international entrepreneurs launching businesses all over the world. So we'll talk a little bit about the Startup Visa program. And I know there's other incubators and designated organizations here, so you've probably heard a little bit of the basics of the program. So I'll try not to spend too much time dealing with those types of things. But really one of the things that we look at for Empowered is that a lot of people focus on the business. When the Canadian government created the Startup Visa program, so we were one of the first designated organizations or the designated incubators to be designated by the Canadian government. And we were a party to a number of conversations surrounding the initial stages of the program. And most organizations focus on the business. And the business is definitely important. That's the vehicle that people are able to leverage to access an immigration pathway. But we're pretty convinced that the Canadian government is really trying to attract the human being, right? That's who they're looking to attract. The human being is the one that is going to be resilient, creative, come up with multiple ideas. The Canadian government actually, in a moment of wisdom, actually realized that businesses sometimes fail and that not every business is going to be successful. And businesses quite often, I think there's a 10% success rate or whatever stats you want to use for all businesses. Well, you can imagine coming from another country and launching a business in Canada, you're probably going to be subject to the same failure rates or success rates, however you want to look at it. So the Canadian government, when they created this program to replace the old Canadian Immigrant Investor Program, they were looking for people that were going to add value to Canada. And this program targets international entrepreneurs because of the skills and traits that they bring to the table. And they're trying to attract them. And they want those people to demonstrate activity and genuineness in their business because they just want to make sure those people are real entrepreneurs. One of the things that's great about the program, and I tell anyone who will listen, is that it's straightforward and simple, right? It's not a complicated program. Most immigration programs around the world are fraught with all kinds of crazy sort of stages and levels. I was at a seminar or webinar actually with someone that was running some immigration programs for Australia. And I was just sitting there going, holy smokes, how the heck do you navigate all of the hurdles and hoops you have to jump through, right? Startup Visa in Canada is have a business that's innovative, Be genuine and active in the business. Find a designated organization to approve your business. That's it, right? And then launch your business. That's it. Just do what you said you were going to do when you applied. If you do those things, the program is literally one of the best programs out there because that's how simple it is, right? Now, there's a lot of steps that need to be done along the way, and there's details to all those things. But in a nutshell, if that's who you are as an entrepreneur and looking to immigrate to Canada, then the program was created for you. And there's, people always ask you what are success rates. And Canada's not trying to keep you out. They're trying to invite you in. So that's one of the things that I think is really nice about the programs. It's easy to understand. It's simple. It's straightforward, and you don't. There's not a lot of craziness, surrounding the program. The other thing that the Canadian government did is, very early they recognized that they're not business experts. They're government. They're bureaucratic. They don't really understand the startup ecosystem, and so they tasked organizations like ours, business experts, in the 3 categories, to be able to administer the program for them. Right? Basically, they entrusted certain firms to be able to say, hey, listen, we need you to go out and vet, find, and interact with these international entrepreneurs to make sure that they're a good fit. And we'll check your work and we'll make sure that everything is in alignment. But we're going to trust you guys to do it because that's you've gone through our designation process, and we need somebody to basically act as an administrator of the program. So that creates some opportunities for people to have a smooth, direct, and straightforward path, and have a couple of layers of checks, but to be able to get what they're looking for and do it in a quick and streamlined manner. So what are the requirements? And we won't spend a ton of time on this just because I think it's probably been hashed over. But basically there's an English language requirement. That's one of the main things that you have to be able to have a functional English language ability. Level 5 is not super high. And quite often when you've dealt with enough international entrepreneurs, like our firm has gotten very good at being able to interact with people that have English as a second language. The business has to be innovated, okay? It has to be approved by a designated organization, okay? And we'll get into a little bit later what an innovative business looks like. And it has to be able to scale globally. This is one that's actually pretty important because we do get a lot of people proposing simple businesses, right, that don't have the ability to scale. And again, we'll speak a little bit about that in more detail. And then the founders have to be genuine. This is one that we spend the most time at Empowered sort of trying to get to the heart of, right? And there's a number of techniques that we use, and our due diligence process is really just trying to get to the heart and soul of, what are your intentions here, right? And really it's not because we're the deciding factor on, what your intentions are, but we just know that if your intentions aren't to start the business, it could be a bumpy ride. If your intentions are to start the business, it's a great program and you'll get what you want. So we just try to make sure that we be upfront with people right out of the gate. And then there are ownership requirements and all those types of things. And then the other thing is that people have to be active in their business, right? And this is one thing that gets a lot of conversation as well. What does activity mean? Okay, what does active mean in a business? Well, for us, activity can take all different shapes and sizes. You might have a 25-year-old who is got all kinds of energy and wants to do everything themselves. Well, that's activity. That's great. That's someone that would be a great fit for the program. You also might have someone who's 55, who has built multiple businesses in their home country, right? And maybe has not got the same level of energy to do everything themselves. Maybe they've reached a certain status in their life where they can actually pay other people to do some of those things, right? Those people are great too, right? The CEO type of entrepreneur. You just can't be disengaged. You just can't be paying somebody to launch your business for you and not have any clue or any desire to understand what's going on in your business. So that activity piece is important, and it can be shaped a little bit depending on the type and stage of your entrepreneurship. And then lastly, and very simply, businesses need to be incorporated in Canada, and they also need to hold their intellectual property in Canada. Okay, and not every innovative business has intellectual property. That's a question I get a lot. But if you do, it does need to be held in Canada. That's one of the requirements of the program. So some features, okay? These are some things that are usually, conversation points with potential clients. They're also things that I think are important to understand. No multiple steps. It's a direct-to-PR application process. You can apply for work permit and PR at the same time. Many of our clients do. We think it's a good pathway, but it's not mandatory. A lot of people, a lot of our clients, especially in the recent years with the pandemic and stuff, there were some issues with coming on a work permit, so that changed things a little bit. But there's always been entrepreneurs that are running businesses and are busy, and they just can't leave their business in Hong Kong for 12 months and do everything in Canada, right? So for them, they might be staying in their home country, right? But again, we always try to emphasize that staying in your home country, sitting on your hands, doing nothing with your business, not a great plan, right? Sitting in Hong Kong, running multiple businesses and launching your business in Canada virtually, legitimate plan, right? Good plan, right? You just are still going to need to show that something's happening. You can bring your family. You can have teams. Teams are great. Light, many hands make light lifting, or whatever that saying is. And expedited work permit and PR processing. I know that probably would get a bit of a chuckle and smile these days, but still, in the grand scheme of things, and it's more regional now than it used to be. We used to see processing on work permits in 6 weeks, like clockwork prior to the pandemic. Now we're seeing all over the place different timelines. Sometimes they're 6 months from certain regions, which sucks. And sometimes they're 6 weeks again from other regions, right? So we're hoping that the coming back to at least having some things processed in a timely manner means that the IRCC is starting to get back on track, but still expedited in terms of the grand scheme of what processing is for work permits or permanent residency. No minimum investment, okay, so there are no minimums. Many programs around the world do say you have to invest $200,000 or whatever it is. No minimums in the incubator category anyways. You only need to demonstrate your settlement funds. Now, we do tell entrepreneurs all the time who kind of say, well, that's great, I don't need any money. And I'm like, well, again, not a great plan. If you're going to start a business, you probably should have some resources, or at least have access to some resources to be able to launch that business. It would look kind of fishy for me to immigrate to Saudi Arabia and start a business and say, hey, I got just what I got in my pockets right now, right? They would probably look funny at me. So there does need to be a plan in place, whether it's through VCs or some kind of funding process or plan, or most of the people we work with are self-funding their ventures, at least at the early stages. And then no business performance requirements. That's another one that I think is pretty important. And this is one of the things that, again, we work in different countries around the world and do startup visa and other programs that are entrepreneurial. And many of the other startup visa programs across the globe have put these strange and constricting and restrictive benchmarks on the business, right? Meaning that you have to hire this many people, you have to make this much money or this much revenue by year one. And Canada hasn't done that. And I think it's to our credit, and it's actually quite smart, because they understood at the very minimum that it's really hard to grow a business by itself. To do it and meet these random benchmarks that have been set out by a government is even harder. So that's where a lot of the other startup visa programs around the world seem to have gone wrong. And the fact that there aren't these benchmarks that are stressing early stage startups, I think makes the program a better and more accessible program. So some of the benefits, again, straightforward. We talked about that. Applications, the applicants, and we tell our clients all the time, you're in control of your PR, really. I mean, I know the IRCC is going to process it, but again, if you go back to one of the first things I said, is that this program was created for international entrepreneurs from around the world to come and start innovative startups in Canada, right? So the Canadian government went through all this trouble, scrapping an old program, creating this new program, put all this energy and time into it. And their target is international entrepreneurs. So if that's you, they're not trying to keep you out. They're trying to invite you in. They created the program for you, in fact, right? You just got to make sure that you're a square peg in a square hole, and you're not a square peg in a round hole. And so you have to you just have to understand that once you get access, once you have your letter of support, your commitment certificate, and you have the support of a good incubator or designated organization, now it's in your hands. Just do what you said you were going to do, and very, very few people that are those people get rejected. And again, some timelines there. Now I know they might be a little bit longer. In some regions. We are still seeing, at Empowered anyways, we are still seeing that processing on PRs are happening close to that 24-month range on average. We've had a couple that have gone over. We've had some that have been lower. I always try to remind people that it's not a queue system. It's not like I lined up first, got my application in first, I get processed first. It is merit-based in large doses, so good applicants get processed faster than problematic applicants. That's the program. Right? So if you're a good applicant and you have good evidence of activity and your business is progressing and all these types of things, typically speaking, even during the pandemic, we're seeing those people being processed in a somewhat timely manner. The other things, flexible requirements, there's no age limit, there's no restrictions on where you can live, all those types of things. And then work permit, we've talked about that already. And one of the things I also mentioned with work permits doesn't mean you have to stay in Canada, 12 months, can't leave, you're a prisoner here, right? You can come on a work permit, and many of our clients come back and forth and go back to their homelands and visit family and do things and then come back again. So, I mean, the program and the work permit process does allow for life to exist in a commonsensical way, right? So, and then, like I said, the founders' activities is really the key element to immigration success. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about what is innovative, because this is a question I get a ton, and we get all kinds of businesses directed to us from our partners and clients around the world from our B2C channels. The way that I try to describe it to people is there's very few businesses that we come across that are truly, truly innovative, that are just brand new, no one's ever thought of it, right? I would say less than 15% probably fit into that category in some way. But we would say that new products and new processes are definitely things that are innovative, okay? They're just rare. The majority of the businesses that we're dealing with are people that have improvements to existing products or existing processes. That's where the majority of innovation happens these days. Example I use is say DoorDash. Okay, great. You're delivering food. Okay, that's not new. It's been happening for probably centuries. I don't know, at least a couple decades for sure. So what's new about that? Well, they've created a way for people to find work and for people to get food from restaurants that don't have delivery services. Okay, so great. Improvement to the delivery service is really what it boils down to. So that's where we're seeing a lot of innovation, is improvements to things that already exist. Okay, and quite often the people are already working in industries where these things exist, and they sit down and go, geez, it would be way better if we could do this, or it would be way better if they had this. And that's where the innovation comes from. The other thing that has to be in place is the business has to be able to scale globally. Okay, it doesn't mean that it has to scale globally. It just means that it has to have the ability to. And usually that means it can grow without adding more human beings. Okay, so again, that usually drives itself towards tech platforms and things like that, but not always. Okay, and that's one thing that we get all the time is, oh, does it have to be a tech business? And more often than not, it ends up being something like that, but it doesn't have to be. And then you have to basically get the approval of the designated organization. And the designated organizations have been entrusted to be the deciders of innovative businesses, right? So you just have to convince one of us that it fits the requirements, okay? Some of the businesses that don't fit, that I get a lot of conversations around, restaurants, simple sort of traditional retail outlets, things like that, they don't fit. Consultancies, professions like plumbers or law firms even, or accountants, unfortunately they just don't fit. They have trouble scaling in most cases. Doesn't mean that things connected to those industries can't have scalability and it can't be innovative businesses. But if someone was saying, I'm going to start a law firm, unfortunately that doesn't fit. And and then it's just a matter of figuring out, okay, well, what is the ability to scale? How does it connect to the backgrounds of the people? Is it something that is, a legitimate business, and what is the opportunity now? And that's the true business question that we ask is, what is the opportunity? At Empowered, we've gotten away a little bit from trying to pick winners and losers, just because we know that, well, we're not amazing at it. I don't think anyone's amazing at it. If everyone was great at picking the best businesses out there, I think everyone here would be rich already. You would just stop wasting your time on all the ones that aren't productive and focus your attentions on the 3 that you know for sure are going to be, huge hits, and there you go, you're a millionaire, right? Unfortunately, it's not that easy, okay? And there's a lot of factors that come into it that are really hard to predict. So the Empowered Startup Advantage, this is kind of a little bit about us, and why we think we do a pretty good job in the Startup Visa program. If you look at metrics over the course of the Startup Visa program, we were designated towards the end of 2014. We've been the most successful. We've had the most amount of approved clients. We've actually had the most volume of entrepreneurs, and we've been doing it for a long time. Okay, and experience matters in a lot of things, and I would say that Startup Visa program is one of those things. When you've done 350 some odd cases, you've taken your lumps along the way, and your next client, your 351st, doesn't necessarily need to learn like your first client needed to learn. Okay. We don't run cohorts. We can take clients today. If you had a qualified business right now and we were able to approve it, we could start working with you tomorrow. Okay, so there's no waiting around for a group of people of 10 to be ready to move forward in a program, which makes us nimble, and it allows us to work one-on-one with all of our clients throughout the entirety of our process. We're working with businesses at all stages. I would say our specialty is probably earlier stage startups, so pre-prototype, but we have worked with clients and businesses at all stages, and we don't really have a preference. They just require slightly different incubation and different services. So early stage startups, idea stage businesses, definitely we work all the time with them. Revenue stage businesses, we maybe have only 20-30% of our clients are at that stage, but definitely able to and work very well with those revenue stage businesses. We're also in the industry agnostic. So we're not claiming to be the experts in tech or agriculture or anything. Our job is to be experts in the Canadian business environment and to help our clients connect with people that are experts in their fields. Quite often, our clients are experts in their fields, right? We deal with entrepreneurs all the time that literally are amongst the top 5 to 10 people in their industry, right? And it would be a little presumptuous of us to say, hey, well, that's great, but listen to us, we're empowered startups. We'll just do what we tell you to do, right? So our job is to connect them to ecosystems and innovation that are going to help them move their business forward, and that's going to be very, very specific. So there's no cookie cutter approach. We don't plug somebody into a program that's going to work the same for a tech platform for a 25-year-old's launching their first business and somebody that's already got revenue in the door and launched 15 businesses over the course of their life. Like I said, we've been running for 7 years. It's a tested program. We've actually evolved our program over the first 5 years, and the program we're running right now is fairly different than the one we launched in 2015, 2014. And a lot of the things we've learned along the way are in our program now and are in place to make sure that the journey goes smooth. And again, we've worked with clients from all over the world. Literally, we were looking the other day at where all of our clients have come from over our 7.5 years. And you name it, every continent, almost every country that you would think of, we've had clients that have come from there. And it's important because there is a different flavor and a culture to every location. And there is some nuance to dealing with that culture, but also some nuance to dealing with the processing of that culture within an immigration program. And we're not doing the immigration processing, but trust me, there's nuances to dealing with someone from Iran and dealing with someone from the United States. Very, very different experiences, very different processes, very different pitfalls, right? And if you're not aware of those things, there's a lot of missteps that can be made. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to have experiences across all of those nationalities to be able to help navigate those things and hopefully avoid any challenges. And then, like I mentioned earlier at the beginning, we're connected globally. We're not just a Canadian incubator. We are Canadian. That's our core business. That's where our core operations are. But we have offices in the United States. We have offices in Europe. We have satellite offices in Southeast Asia. We have a presence everywhere, and that allows us or provides different opportunities to our clients. Our program, basically break it down to a simple 3-step process. We start with an evaluation process that we can move pretty quickly through, and that's basically just to understand whether the person is a qualified applicant. We ask for documents, we evaluate documents, there's a back and forth that goes, and then usually it culminates in an interview of some kind. And the interview is, again, part of our due diligence process, but also just to make sure that we're getting to the heart and soul of whether this person is a genuine and a real qualified applicant for the program, right? And it's amazing how you have layers to your evaluation process and how quickly you can get to the heart of something. We would then go to an acceleration phase. Acceleration is really where we are able to allow our startup leaders or our startup mentors to be able to work with entrepreneurs, okay? It allows us to get to know them better. It also allows us to help shape their business to make sure that it is something that's going to be qualified for the SUV program. Not everybody has to go through this stage. If you are a revenue stage business and have a validated business model, then we usually would bypass that phase because that's really the crux of what we're trying to build is a validated business models and put together the business submissions. So if it's a business that's already got $100,000 through the door, we would have a slightly different process and maybe go directly to our third stage. And then the incubation phase, which is where we're providing letter of support. We're now actually going to start working with the business, and acceleration would be a little bit more in the theoretical realm, whereas the incubation would be a little bit more in the practical of launching the business. That can be done virtually or it can be done in Canada. And then basically, how do you get going? Well, it's pretty simple for a client. Like we tell them all the time, all we need is a document package and we can get back to you within 24 hours with our feedback and our thoughts. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that. The better the document package, the more accurate our evaluation can be. But we encourage people all the time to talk with firms like Mansouri to be able to get immigration advice in addition to startup visa advice. And we try to work very closely with our immigration partners to make sure that there's a full-throated sort of understanding of what that person's getting into, understanding each side has a role, but that's the goal, is to make sure that they're well educated so that they can move forward with confidence and have a good understanding of what to expect. That's one of the things that we've found over our 7 or 8 years, is setting those expectations early is really important to a successful journey. The bumpy ones usually come from when the client thought something that wasn't true, and they get 8 months in and all of a sudden it comes to the surface that wasn't true. Now they think this, and now all the problems that have come make a lot of sense because they either didn't get the right information or they got bad information, and there's no shortage of bad information floating around out there. So that would be our SUV program. We'll jump quickly in to our foreign graduate program. Now this is something that's kind of an exciting program for us because it's new, and anytime you do anything for 7 or 8 years, it's exciting to have another Canadian program that you can dig your teeth into. It is a PMP program, so all those nice things I said about being simple and straightforward, it's PMP. What are you going to do? There's multi-stage, there's point systems, there's all kinds of funniness. But it doesn't have to be that complicated, and we've found, especially because this is a new program, some of the things that might be more complicated in year 3 or 4, when there's a lineup and there's a lot of people in line wanting to get access to this program, are not really a factor right now. You have to basically meet the minimum requirements, and then you're pretty much good to go. But it basically is, it's for people that have graduated from universities or colleges outside of Canada. Okay, and Alberta has targeted those people to say, hey, listen, again, entrepreneurial traits, come to Alberta and launch a business. Okay, they have to have graduated within 10 years, which is one of the requirements that we'll speak to a little bit later. The business doesn't have to be innovative; it just needs to be a startup. Okay, so this is one of the nice things for us as a designated organization running the startup visa program, where everything has to be innovative. This program doesn't require the innovation criteria. Okay, so it doesn't mean that restaurants are going to fit the program. It just means that you don't have to have the same level of scrutiny to the business. And we were fortunate enough, and largely because of our positioning within the Startup Visa program and the success we've had in that program, the Alberta government tapped us to be one of 2 designated organizations that are running this program. Okay, so we're quite excited about that because, you know, obviously being one of 2 is kind of rare air. It also provides a lot of opportunity because we think that the program actually is a very good program, you know, for a slightly different targeted entrepreneur. And so we're excited to be, you know, to be running it and to have the privilege of being one of the 2 designated agencies there. And it's also exciting because the Alberta government has been a really good partner so far. They actually included us in the creation of the program. They took some of our advice. The 10-year graduation requirement was actually, it started at 2 years, which we were not super happy about because what 2-year entrepreneurs have money and all those other things that you need to launch a business. And so they bumped it back a little bit and made it 10 years to see if we could get some traction. So one of the key elements is that instead of innovation, what the Alberta government has said is that the business needs to be connected to these 8 targeted sectors, okay? The key word is connected. What connected means, honestly, only the Alberta government knows. But it doesn't mean that you have to be running an aerospace company. It could be something that is connected to the aerospace industry. It could be something like a telecommunication firm that has a contract, or it could be project management. There's a lot of connections. And usually our process, because of the good relationship, is, you know, we get somebody who's applying. It's not an obvious connection. We throw an email out to our contact there, and they get back to us within, you know, 2 days saying, yep, I think that would fit, or no, that's not going to fit. Okay. The big thing that they're getting at, though, with this approach is that they're just starting. They just don't want, you know, a janitorial service or another restaurant or something that, you know, that a lot of other programs are being inundated with. They're looking for something that's a little bit more of a substance, let's say, than that. So again, you saw the 8 sectors. Empowered, so like I said, we're one of 2 designated agencies. You know, the role of the designated agency in this program is partly to market the program. So one of the reasons why we were an appealing incubator was because of our scope and reach, and because of the volume of applicants we'd done in SEV. So when they were looking at that organizations to work with, they wanted somebody that could help them grow this program. And so one of our jobs is to tap into our network of professionals around the world to be able to say, hey, listen, you know, here's a program. Alberta's a welcoming province, and you should consider it. Okay. We actually get to select the applicant, meaning that they apply to us. If we don't provide them with our approval, there's no access to the program. Okay. So we're the gatekeepers, really, and which obviously is a lot of responsibility, but it also is an exciting role to play. We also determine the readiness. So we're part of our evaluation is not only on the business, but is this entrepreneur, you know, serious enough? Are what they're saying, is it truthful? And then, you know, to some degree, at one of the stages is to evaluate the potential opportunity of the startup or the business that they're proposing. Now that's you know, evaluated by the Alberta government as well, but they depend on us to be able to put forward our thoughts on whether the opportunity is a legitimate one. And then support, you know, in building out those business plans and making sure that they're positioned properly, and then also to make sure that we mentor and connect and guide the clients once they're actually trying to execute their business plan and launching the business in Alberta. So the requirements. The requirements basically not super complicated, although if you looked at the Alberta website, you might get lost in the sea of things that they list. Basically, you have to have some work experience, only 6 months work experience in the area that you're launching the business. Work done with an incubator or with your startup, you know, on your own can count. So it's not really a super restrictive work experience criteria. But there does need to be some background in the area of business that you're talking about. So to have somebody who is an engineer that's launching an accounting firm in Alberta and they've never done anything with accounting, that might get some scrutiny. So we just have to make sure that, you know, things make sense. Education, like I said, you have to have graduated with a diploma or degree from college or university anywhere in the world. You have to go through a ECA process or education credentialing process that is a part of many of the immigration programs in Canada. But once you have that, then then you're approved if you have, like I said, a degree or diploma. Obviously, there's more points for the higher you're educated. So if you're a doctorate, then you get a certain amount of points and so on and so forth. Language requirements, CLB level 5. Again, this was one of the ones that they changed. It was a CLB level 7. Go figure, Alberta, had high English language requirements, but they reduced it to a 5. So now it's a little bit more on par with some of the other PMP programs in the SUV program. Ownership requirements, okay, you have to have at least 34% ownership if you're launching a business in the 2 urban areas in Alberta, so Calgary and Edmonton. You have to have at least 34% ownership. That means that you can actually have another owner that is not on the application, could be a Canadian, could be a foreigner, and still be a valid application. The one thing that you cannot have is 2 applicants. So unlike Startup Visa, you can't have teams of people applying on this program. It's only one founder, okay? So that is one area that it's a little bit more restrictive. And then the ownership requirement for outside of what they call regional areas, anywhere outside of Edmonton and Calgary, is 51%, okay? We talk to clients all the time, like they might not want to live in Red Deer or somewhere like that. I've been to Red Deer. I don't know if I want to live in Red Deer either. So you can actually, there's a lot of places that are just outside of the city limits of those cities that do qualify as a regional area and now have, a higher ownership percentage, but also a lower investment percentage, which or number that I'll talk about a little bit later. And then you have to have settlement funds, okay? So anywhere between $9,000 to $35,000, depending on size of family and a bunch of things. So pretty standard. And somehow language got up there twice. It's not because it's extra important. Okay. Alberta requirements for business related are going to be business plan. Okay. You have to have a full business plan, including financials. Okay. So super important. Business plan is something that at Empowered will help put together for you, and we'll get to how important the business plan is a little bit later. There's got to be a pitch deck, okay, 10-minute slide presentation. That is also a part of what they call the expression of interest that must be submitted. You have to have a letter of recommendation, okay? That can only come from a designated agency, okay? So if you don't get recommended by Empowered or the other guys, then you don't have access to the program, okay? And you have to have a minimum business investment. So for those regional areas outside of Calgary and Edmonton, the minimum investment is 50,000 Canadian dollars, okay? Inside those 2 urban centers, it's $100,000. Okay, so there is, the two levels. You don't have to invest that before you arrive. That's money that is going to be allocated for your business. They're expecting you to have that laid out in your business plan, and then when you do land on your work permit, they would expect you to start, to incorporate your business, to have a share capital agreement with your corporation, and then to use those funds as you've laid out in the business plan. Our process, again, we try to keep things pretty simple at Empowered. We have basically a 5-step process, okay? Would be evaluation would be the first one, okay? Very similar. We go through a process where we're evaluating documents, getting a sense of whether they meet the requirements. There would be an interview and a number of steps where we're just trying to get to know the clients to make sure that they're a good fit for the program. We also engage the immigration representative because, again, we do not represent immigration files at Empowered. We want at least 2 professionals, one on the business side, one on the immigration side, working with every file. We find that's the best approach to ensuring that nothing gets missed. And so we would go through that evaluation process. Then very quickly we would get to what we call the acceleration and business planning. So we would now work within our accelerator program. Usually it's done virtually, usually almost always. Client stays in their home country, working with our startup mentors, building out their expression of interest. So the business requirements that we talked about earlier. Really important at that stage, and one of the reasons why we want to have some input on what those business plans look like is because the objectives that are laid out in the business plan that they submit and the Alberta government approves are the objectives and the goals that they will be measured by, okay? So Sometimes, depending on anyone that's dealt with business plans here, sometimes there's business plans you present to investors who usually are a little rosier, best case scenario, this is what I'm going to get, this is how it's going to work. Okay, might not be your best to submit that same type of business plan to the Alberta government, okay? Just because they're going to say, well, great, you said you're going to make $2 million by 18 months, so where is your $2 million? Let's see it, right? And you set yourself up for a very difficult sort of a judgment on your immigration file, right? And it doesn't mean that we're trying to sandbag it on it either. We just want to make sure they're realistic. We'd love to have those goals and objectives be things that are within the client's control, right? That's something where we're hoping is going to be a part of it, where the client says, yeah, well, I got these resources. These are things I can do. We know what we can do as far as empowered. We know where our connections are as far as research and development and all these other types of things. Let's make sure that they're things that are within the control of the people that are on the file, right? And not subject to market research. An example we use all the time is that, you might have any kind of business, November 2019, they had all kinds of great projections. Pandemic hits, bang, I bet you nobody met their business goals in 2020, and so on and so forth, and that's basically how the program works. If you meet your goals laid out in your business plan, nominated for PR. Pretty simple, okay? So no subjectivity, only objectivity, okay? So if you have 5 goals, you meet all 5, you're getting permanent residency, okay? And obviously you can't be a criminal and all the other things that are required, okay? And then there's a final business review or business report that is submitted and goes from there. So just in the interest of time, so what's the advantage of the foreign graduate entrepreneur stream, okay? It's a new program that can be scary, but it can also be exciting, okay? New programs, sometimes people are like, well, how many people have been successful in the program? How many have been rejected? Well, it's brand new. So literally, there's 11 clients right now. All of them have come from us that are in the program. That's it. So there is no, history to it, okay? All I can tell people is that by being first, you have a pretty easy path. The point system is irrelevant. Meet the minimums, you're in, okay? The Alberta government has been a great partner for us. They again, we know a little bit about government because we work with them on programs. They didn't create this program so it could fail, right? In fact, they are very anxious about it failing, right? So they want to see it be successful. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to do whatever and invite anyone. That's not what it means. But it does mean that they've spent a lot of time, energy, and resources putting a program in place that they think is going to accomplish their immigration goals for the betterment of the province, and they don't want to see it be unsuccessful. They want to see it be successful. So they want people like Empowered and firms like Empowered to go and find good clients that are going to be good fits for the program. So they've said that especially at the beginning, no backlogs, no delays, they're going to process things pretty quick, okay? There's no 31 months that you might see for SUV on whatever the website is. Like if I want to be able to tell a client that, hey, you know what, you got a good chance, I call my counterpart at the Alberta government, we have a short conversation, they say, yeah, it looks pretty good. They'll process it, and give an official determination maybe in, 4 or 5 weeks type of thing, right? Which is in the early stages, that's one of the benefits. And Alberta very motivated. They want to see it be successful, as I said. Fast processing. So, we talk about the 2 stages. It really ends up not being that much different than SUV, right? You can submit your final report after 12 months if you've achieved all of your goals. You have 18 months to achieve your business goals. So you could be looking at being nominated for permanent residency within 12 months, right? Or maybe 14 months, because there is a bit of a lag between successful on your business plan and being nominated, right? So your timelines are pretty similar, okay, especially today with the startup visa program. Business doesn't need to be innovative, okay, it just has to be connected to those targeted areas. That opens up a lot of possibilities that aren't available for the SUV program or other business immigration programs sometimes. Franchises are possible, so actually they do allow for someone to come in and buy a franchise, right, which is an interesting sort of avenue. You could open up a financial planning firm if you had a background there and ended up getting the licenses and stuff, and that would fit into the financial sector of the targeted sectors. And again, there's no subjectivity. You meet your goals, you're getting permanent residency, and that's that.
Thank you, Sean, for the excellent speech and really informative. I have a question.
Sure.
So for the AAIP program, as far as I know, in addition to the foreign graduate entrepreneur stream, they also have the rural entrepreneur stream and I think it's called entrepreneur stream. So is your firm also working on those two streams as well, or?
No, we're not. So I wouldn't be a great source of information on either of those streams, although I do know a little bit because it has come up in conversations quite a bit with other applicants, right? We're not, because I mean the rural stream is a little bit different than the startup stream. And just wasn't interesting to us, so we just didn't get involved. I believe the rural stream, instead of going through designated agencies, you go through basically the city council in the town, right? So the interesting part about this and the only thing I know about this is because we actually tracked down a client that was looking at both, and so we investigated a little bit. Okay, well, what is this rural stream, right? And even the Alberta government right now doesn't know exactly how that process is going to work, right? Because I mean, you go to, I don't know, Timbuktu, where there's 75 people in the town, and they have a city council where, you know, the mayor is, you know, the librarian, and he runs a gas station, and I mean, like, I don't know, they're still not sure how that's gonna, you know, how that approval process. I mean, I think it's two-staged anyways, right? So they get approved by, you know, like a designated agency. The city council approves the business and the opportunity. It still needs to go through the Alberta government, right? So there is that second check to be able to say, hey, listen, I hear that you say you want this business to come, but it doesn't fit what we're looking for. Yeah.
Thank you. And I have another question. So regarding the startup program, so based on your best knowledge and based on your experience, what will be the expected successful rate for those applicants or the entrepreneurs?
So what would be the success rate? So I think I get the question a ton, right? And it's a tough one because like the stats are not published widely. It's really hard to corral all the information. What I tell people is that if you are a good client, so you have an innovative business, you actually want to launch it, and you're willing to put energy and effort into launching the business, the success rates are through the roof. They're like 98%, right? Every now and then the government does screwing up and you're like, okay, I don't understand, or you see a case, but they're through the roof, right? The problem becomes is when you start working on the fringes of the program, right? Where, you know, there's someone who is being given an idea and they don't really care about the idea and they're presenting it. Those ones, honestly, I don't know what the number is, but those ones definitely have a bumpy ride. And we find that, you know, what we're trying to do in our process anyways is to have those things come to the surface early, so we can give the client good advice and say, hey, listen, this is not a great fit for you, right? You know, and for us, like we quite often, one of the nice things I have in the Alberta program is that we're able to sort of say, hey, listen, you know, you don't have an innovative business. You don't really want to launch that business. It's fairly clear. You know, you are a business person. Why don't you launch a business in Alberta, right? But I think those two categories is important to separate. The hard part is that, you know, like people always present the best face to you when they're trying to get into a program. So, you know, I'd be lying if I said we were perfect at evaluating whether someone's genuine and active and all those types of things, right? Oh, I'm getting out of here. No, I'm joking. I'll be around for a little bit. So yeah, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so very much, Sean. So now we have another 15 minutes of tea and coffee break. Please enjoy and help yourself.
Mr. Mansouri, thank you for holding this great event. I have a generic question regarding the immigration trends of this year. So what is your insight when you look at this immigration trends or policy from the national perspective?
Well, when it comes to business classes of immigration, we used to have more attention towards pathways that had sort of PR guaranteed or PR attached to them, or if you will, the dual intent application packages, such as PMP entrepreneur applications or startup program or buying a business, etc. But with the prolonged processing times these days, after hence the COVID pandemic that we are seeing, more people are interested in pathways that are faster, at least quicker to arrive to Canada and worry about your PR later on. So IMP or even to some degree owner and operator LMI variation or C11, C12 intercompany transfer, these are picking up more attention, while people are still interested in the dual intent application packages such as PMPs. And a lot of times some of our clients choose to adopt both scenarios at the same time, meaning apply for a work permit under the IMP program, which is relatively faster, and have your longer vision on the PMP program so that hopefully you can arrive, get additional points for your exploratory visit, and then transition into the PMP program so that you have a good hope for your PR. Sure.
So I just take the chance and read one of the online questions. What are the differences between C11 and C12?
Okay, C11. These are both subcategories of the International Mobility Program, which essentially means you don't have an LMIA or labor market impact assessment. You can basically have a company offer you the job and come to Canada without assessing the impact that this job opportunity might have on the local labor market. C11 is for entrepreneurs themselves, for the owner of the business. An owner means if you control and have ownership of at least 51% or more in the business, and you're a director, you're basically undismissible from the business, then you can offer yourself a job from the corporation that you control the interest of and come to Canada. Typically, we need significant economic or significant cultural benefit attached to the business plan. We need to exploit on areas that gain you more significant benefits, such as Jason earlier pointed out, such as exporting Canadian goods and services, innovative ideas, remote business locations, employing more Canadians, etc. So C11 category, which is an exemption for LMI under the IMP, helps a variety of immigration pathways, such as self-employed people. Basically, if you have applied to come to Canada or are about to apply to come to Canada under the federal self-employed program, which is typically for athletes and people in arts and culture, then you can offer yourself a job and come to Canada faster while your PR application is in process. Or alternatively, C11 is also used for people that have a letter of support from an incubator in a SUV program. Again, we go with C11. Also, if you merely just want to come to Canada temporarily, you don't have permanent resident desires, you're well off in your own country, you have your business, but you just want to have a new business in Canada so that you can export your services and products to the North American market, then again, you can apply and obtain a closed work permit under C11. However, C12 is for intra-company transferees. Basically, if there is a company out of Canada that has a qualifying relationship with a company inside Canada, and qualifying relationship only has two different categories. A, they can be affiliates with each other, meaning the owner or owners of both companies are the same, at least for the majority or like more than 51% of the shares. And second scenario is subsidiary or parent relationship. Basically, the company that is outside is the parent of the company that is in Canada or vice versa. This way, and also if these two companies have a qualifying business relationship with each other. For example, if I have a mechanic shop in Iran and I want to open a mechanic shop in Canada, this relationship doesn't qualify because these are not sort of guaranteeing one another's income or success. However, if I have an immigration practice in Canada, or for example in Iran, and I want to open an office in Canada, this qualifies potentially because the office in Iran enjoys the benefit of having its affiliate in Canada. It guarantees its success more and more. And also the office in Canada benefits from having an office in Iran because the office in Iran is sort of promoting, facilitating the recruitment of your new clients and the relationship thereafter, and the employees will help each other remotely, you know. So once these relationships are established, then you're looking at sending one of your qualifying employees to the new branch in Canada to start or to facilitate your business. But this is only temporarily. And in most situations, you can only renew that work permit for up to 7 years. A good example would be if we have one of our managers in our Iran company that is the manager of our, say, marketing or our temporary visa programs division. And we want to ask this person to come to Canada and help establish the new company or the division within the new company. The job positions that usually qualify are executive or senior managerial or specific knowledge or specific skills. Meaning if, for example, I have a jewelry, this is a real example of one of our files. This is a jewelry manufacturing, jewelry design company in Iran that we recently were working on. So they want to open their new branch, which will produce, export, and sell in Canada. So they need to send one of their designers that is especially knowledgeable and it has the particular expertise that is attached to the way they are doing their business. It's not easy for them to find someone to do the exact same things that this person does in Iran. So they're sending this person here temporarily so that he or she can recruit designers or manufacturers and train them and make sure the way they're conducting business in the Canadian branch is in accordance with the way that they are pleased to run their business. This is C12.
I would like to know that how long does the study permit process while the applicant is inside Canada?
Yeah, so while our seminar is mostly focused on business-related immigration matters, but I'm happy to answer your question. The most recent study permit, the initial study permit that we have got approved here in our firm was 1 month after application. But these are the applications that go to Alberta. This is converting your status from visitor to student from within Canada. If it's an outside Canada matter we're talking, the designated helping office that is helping the most near office out of Canada, which is Los Angeles, and these days this new office that's helping Los Angeles is in Niagara. It can take up to 3 or 4 months.
Thank you. My question is about you specifically went to C11 for athletes and artists, and could you please give me a little more explanation of the requirements and the process, please?
Yeah, so basically C11 is for people that want to come to Canada and start their own business. Some of these people have a parallel actual permanent immigration application in place, or at least the desire to have one of those applications. This is called a dual intent situation. Some of these people don't have a dual intent. Their sole intent is to come to Canada temporarily and be allowed to commute back and forth to Canada and manage their business. So when it comes to athletes and artists, we have a permanent class that's called Federal Self-Employed Class. If you're able to demonstrate that you meet the specific criteria of this self-employed program, you can apply for PR from out of Canada and eventually hopefully be processed and approved and come to Canada as a PR. But because the process is long, for example, these days it takes about 36 plus months, you may wish to come to Canada faster because you can establish and prove to the officer that your ability to run your business successfully, have a good impact on Canada's environment, be it artistic impact or athletic impact, is probable, and you have all the means of success in Canada, you can apply under C11. So the C11 can be used for different situations, and this is one of them, to get your temporary work permit.
Regarding the category of IMP, is it important that the company, especially when they are in Iran, is it important how long they are operating in Iran, how much revenue they are generating, or if it's even a new established company that they're growing super fast in Iran and then they want to come to Canada, is it possible for them, or takes time to come here? And the second question is, maybe it's not very related to immigration, but based on your experience, because of some sanction or restriction currently for the Iran, does it affect on the decision on the application for such some kind of companies that they want to expand business in Canada?
Yeah, so the second question, Canada doesn't have specific personal sanctions on Iran. Canada follows the UN sanctions. Obviously, you cannot have a business that is relevant to more sensitive areas. I haven't seen a decision being made on the fact that there are sanctions on C-11 situations. And going back to your first question, C-11 can be, as I said, can be leveraged in different scenarios. Sorry, you said IMP. IMP can be leveraged in different scenarios. If it's a C-11 situation, there is no requirement that how long the business has been in operation in Iran. In fact, there can have been no such business. This is a new business, but is in line with the applicant's education and former experience, if you will. But if you're talking about, for example, C-12 situation, the person that is being missioned to Canada, the intra-company transfer person, has to have been working for more than 12 months for the origin company. So basically, this means that the origin company needs to be successful and have some positive revenue that's credible and that has the signs of a good potential for success. There is no minimum pointing system or minimum investment or minimum revenue criteria, but the officer needs to be overall genuinely satisfied that your business plan is sound.
So another question is, can we hire our spouse?
We can hire our spouse. So typically in a C-12 or C-11 situation, your own work permit is closed on your business, but your spouse can have an open work permit. You can hire your spouse. There's no limitation as to whom you want to hire. However, the programs have some requirements attached to them, especially for when you're renewing your work permit. And one of those requirements is that the Canadian company be locally staffed, meaning you need to have permanent residents or citizens that are working for the company. And there are other requirements such as financial transactions and certain degree of establishment, etc. But when it comes to your spouse, you can definitely hire your spouse, but you're not getting any special treatment or any special points for it because you're not helping the creation of jobs for the local people here.
Okay. So can we buy more businesses while we are here?
Buy more businesses?
Yeah.
Well, it depends. As a shareholder, as a passive shareholder of any business, yes, you can buy them on a personal level. Because your work permit is closed, you cannot be active in the management or decision-making or any role in that business. So this is an interesting point. I have an experience. I had gone to the border because one of our clients had gotten themselves into trouble. And with our interactions with the CBSA officer, he was explaining what constitutes work from their perspective. From their perspective, anything that you do in Canada for any business that would otherwise be assigned to a Canadian is considered polluting the labor market, if you will. If you're not authorized to work, or if you're not authorized to work in that specific company, and you even send an email or give a brief consultation about how to make your business successful, basically you're doing something that otherwise a Canadian would have done. Even if you do it for free, it's frowned upon. It's actually not allowed because you are willing to do it for free, but other Canadians could have charged a fee for it, so you're not allowed to do it. But your business, on the other hand, either on a personal level, on your business level, you can purchase shares to other companies. You can, in fact, buy other companies. As far as immigration goes, you're not doing anything wrong as long as you don't work in those companies.
Another question is, can we change our business plan after we receive our work permit?
Depending on what kind of avenue you chose to get your work permit. For example, if it's a PMP entrepreneur situation, you have shown your business plan, you have satisfied the PNP officer of all aspects of your business plan, and they have supported you for your temporary work permit, no. If you come to Canada and don't stick with the requirements and the performance agreement that you signed with the government of the province, basically any changes are making you fall out of your agreement, and meaning that the PMP may not eventually support you for your PR. However, if, for example, if it's a C12 situation or C11 situation, you can make some changes to the way you're, again, just like the startup visa program, you can pivot, but you can't go crazy and default on all of your promises and go start something completely new and expect the officer at the end of your authorized stay to renew your work permit without asking any questions.
Thank you. Just a little bit to add on Mr. Mansouri's comments. So for PMP1, for the business plan change, in one scenario, there is a possibility that you can change your business plan. That is, you increase your investment or increase job creations.
Yeah.
However, even for that scenario, you have to communicate with the business PMP officers in advance.
Yes, yes, definitely. If it's a PMP situation, any changes you want to make, it's a very good idea to communicate in advance with your officer and get their approval. Normally, if you're going up, if you're giving more to Canada, as Roy said, jobs, more investment, better products, it's easier and they're welcoming of your new idea. If you're going to reduce your commitments, they're typically against it. And
yeah, and I would like to share a scenario with everyone. So 3 years ago, just before the pandemic, one of our clients, whose business plan is to set up a golf court in Delta in BC. And in his original business plan, he would like to purchase some equipment from US, and which is made with stainless steel. However, based on his further investigation, when he acquired the existing golf court, he did some analysis and just found out it doesn't make sense to purchase new equipment. However, he can just upgrade the existing equipment. However, he will save the investment to spend it on other items. So overall speaking, the total investment didn't decrease, and the job creation didn't change. And he got the approval from BCPNP, and that has been proceeded.
okay, thank you for sharing. Yeah, this is an interesting situation that can come up. Is there more questions, or you want?
There are more questions,
okay.
But we are running out of time.
Yeah, so I can answer one more question, and then I would like to read the mayor's message that he sent us. And if Ali can project it on the screen.
Okay, so how can I become PR under IMP stream?
So IMP is a means of offering yourself or someone else a job without going through the labor market impact assessment requirements. It has nothing to do with permanent residency. This is important to note. It's just to avoid LMIA. So basically, you avoided LMIA, you got yourself a work permit. But now you have to think about getting your PR under other streams, such as federal skilled worker, maybe Canadian experience class, if your spouse gets a job offer, so on and so forth. So IMP itself is not a permanent immigration solution. This is very important to note. Okay, so can I go about reading the mayor's message and get out of your hair? So, a message from the mayor. On behalf of my colleagues on Vancouver City Council and the citizens of Vancouver, I am pleased to welcome the participants of the first annual 2022 Immigration Conference. As mayor, I am proud that the city of Vancouver is home to a diverse and multicultural population. Vancouver is a destination city for so many new immigrants, many of whom contribute so vibrantly to the culture and economics of the city. There are many educational, cultural, and recreational activities to complement the restaurants, shopping, and entertainment opportunities in our multicultural city. I am confident all those attending the conference will gain a renewed sense of achievement in past accomplishments and an optimistic view of the future. Best wishes for a successful symposium. Sincerely, Mayor Kennedy Stewart. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, Mr. Mansouri. National in Scope and Local in Focus, MNP, is one of Canada's largest full-service chartered professional accountancy and business advisory firms. They have proudly served individual, businesses, and organizations since 1958. Through the development of solid relationships, they provide client-focused accounting, consulting, tax, and digital services. Please welcome Steve Ivako and Roy Tong on the stage.
Salam. I just learned this from my coworker Tina, who came from Iran 5 years ago. And I really appreciate this opportunity to be here and to give this a short presentation. And I know it's a Friday afternoon, so I hope everyone can still keep awake. Sorry. A quick agenda about this quick presentation. So I will give a quick introduction of our firm and our services related to immigration, that is the net worth verification regarding Provincial Nominated Program, or PNP. And also, I'm very honored to introduce my partner, Steve, to present a little bit regarding our family office services, because we believe that is quite important for the investors and entrepreneurs who come to Canada. And when they land here, they will need this service, and they want to be further successful for their life in Canada. And I will also leave a little bit time for questions and answers. A little bit information about our firm. MNP is the second largest accounting firm in BC, and we are the fifth largest accounting firm in Canada. We have offices from coast to coast, that is from Victoria in the west coast and to PEI in the east coast. Altogether, we have more than 7,000 professionals in our firm, including about 1,000 partners. And altogether, we have 117 offices. Regarding our services, we are a full-service accounting firm. That means in addition to the traditional accounting and tax services, we also have consulting, risk management, and forensic and litigation support, evaluation, insolvency, tax, and valuation. And for today, what we are going to introduce is the net worth verification and family office services. Regarding the industries and client sectors we serve, we have most of the sectors covered by our service lines, including agriculture, First Nations, food and beverage, oil and gas, private enterprise, public sector, that includes federal, provincial, and city-level governments. And also we have the real estate sector and the technology sector. To be more specific, for the technology sectors, we do a lot of tax planning, such as SHRED, and to apply for a government grant for them. Also, if they have a plan to go to public, or they want to have more customers, we can also do a lot of IPO-related work, such as internal control certification or the SOC 1, SOC 2 certification for them. For the net worth verification, so as you may know, there is a specific program called the Provincial Nominated Program, and in that, there is a stream for entrepreneurs. And the international entrepreneurs, if they want to come to Canada through that channel, they need to claim their family net worth, and as per requirements of the provincial government, they need to verify this claimed net worth, as well as their funds accumulation. So that means you have to report your family net worth, how many bank accounts, how many real properties, what are the values, and how did you accumulate that net worth through the past 10 or maybe 20 years. And proudly, we are working with all the provinces across Canada to work with the entrepreneur applicants. So to be more specific, we work with the BCPNP, Alberta Immigration Program, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Newfoundland, PEI, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. And also, since we have over 7,000 people in our firm, and we have lots of co-workers who came from different countries with different language skills and cultural background, so we are able to serve clients and entrepreneurs who came from all over the world. Just for information, in the past 2 or 3 years, we have worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs who came from Iran as well. A little bit about our approach, and that is the key differentiator between ourselves and other accounting firms who can do this. First of all, we will have the initial contact with the applicants or the clients or their representatives, such as their immigration agents or lawyers. Oh, sorry. And at that moment, we will have the initial meeting to understand their background, to understand, the portfolio of their net worth. And then based on their specific scenario, we can provide them with a customized checklist. And after that, we will have a service agreement signed between the applicants and us. And the applicants, we will require them to provide their net worth claim form and a narrative description to describe how they accumulate their net worth. And based on those information, we will perform certain review procedures. So for example, if they claim, oh, I have some bank accounts, I have some real properties, or I have some investment accounts, we will require relevant supporting documents. Some are the bank statements or real estate title deeds, valuation reports, or financial statements of their companies. And starting from there, we will perform the review. And if we have any questions or we have any comments, we will communicate with them or with their agents to make sure everything is settled before the report is issued. And that is the key differentiator. And before we issue the report, we will always communicate with our clients and the agents to make sure our understanding is correct. And if we have any concerns, those can be addressed. So there is no barrier for their further steps. And once they are satisfied with the report, we will finalize and we will submit the report to the government. Next is the basic scope of our work. So when we look at the portfolio or the family net worth of the applicant, typically it will include the bank and deposit, the real properties, the investment, businesses, pensions or life insurance, and other assets such as receivables or jewelries. But just for information, different provinces, they have different requirements regarding those categories. So for example, in Nova Scotia, they don't accept jewelries or vehicles. However, in BC or Ontario, those are accepted as family net worth. We also look at the liabilities of the household, such as the real property mortgage or the personal loan or some loans between the applicant and their businesses. And when we look at those supporting documents, we will also calculate the cost of each item, and that is used for the assessment of their funds accumulation. Through the past 10 years, we have served over 4,000 entrepreneurs who came from different countries. And based on our experience, most of them were successful and they passed the net worth verification. For a few of them, we also identified some issues, and I would like to share some of the experience with you guys. So one of the key requirements from the provincial government is the applicant is required to claim completely the household net worth. That includes the principal applicant, the spouse, and any dependent children that is below 21 years old. And a typical mistake we have seen is some applicants believe, oh, it says the applicant's net worth, so they only claim the net worth under himself or herself. And this will be a big problem when they submit the net worth claim to the government. And another lesson we learned is there is some discrepancy between different sources of supporting documents. So for example, sometimes we see in one supporting document, the information is like this, but when we look at another supporting document, so for example, the bank statements, the information is quite different from the other documents, and that will cause some concerns of the government. And another one that is very typical is because most of the applicants, they own their business in their own country. And for some countries, the financial recording or the documentation system is not that mature. So lots of applicants, they messed up their personal assets and their business assets. So for example, they may use their personal bank accounts for their business. So when they look at their bank statements or they look at their bank balances, even though the bank balance is pretty huge, that contains some money belongs to their company. So when they claim their net worth on their claim form, they claim one side in their personal bank accounts. However, when they present or when they claim their business net worth, they also include that balance in their business value. So there is some double counting. So what we did is, when we talk to those clients, we ask them to distinguish which bank account is used by a personal or by a family, and which bank account is used by a business. If there's some overlap, we need to make sure you don't overstate your net worth. And some other issues may regard the foreign exchange rates, especially for those applicants who came from Iran, because in the last couple of years, the exchange rates of Iranian rials changed a lot. And recently, we just confirmed the principle with BCPNP, and we decided to use the rates announced by the Central Bank of Iran for their import and export international tradings. And that is most reasonable, even though there's still some variance between the actual market value and the announced value. However, that is much more reasonable than the 30,000 something. And last one, but not least one, we also see some inadequate information regarding the funds accumulation. So for example, the key principles for the funds accumulation assessment is you have to make sure the total income you earned in the past can support your total spending and your total investment in the past. That is the total cost of your net worth. And some applicants, they made some mistake. They say, hey, okay, I just claimed my income of my past 5 years. Sometimes, even though your income of the past 5 years is high enough, however, when you look at your portfolio or your net worth, you may purchase real property 10 years ago, then there's no way you can use your income within 5 years to verify your net worth earned 10 years ago. So you have to go back further and to provide more information. I will stop here, and then I will hand over to my respectful partner, Steve, and then he will give some more insights on the family office services.
Thank you very much, Roy, and thank you everybody for being here and for inviting us here. Family office is a fairly new concept in Canada. It's been around for a long time, but not very public. Basically what it is, and it's been around for hundreds of years in the US and in Europe and Asia, is taking care of a family who has significant wealth in separate and apart from their business. What most people, sort of think of, like the Rockefellers or somebody like that, or in Canada, the Thompson family, who have their own core people that look after them. What most entrepreneurs have, though, is the people inside of their business to take care of their personal things, too. That usually isn't a good idea because, number one, the people inside the business are good at the business part, usually don't have a lot of knowledge on dealing with personal items for a family. Number two, they're also distracted because if someone inside the business, your bookkeeper, your CFO, your accountant, your internal lawyer is dealing with, your own personal real estate things or your own personal estate planning, they're distracted and they're not making money in the business. They're effectively a cost center for you personally, so that isn't, again, an effective use of resources. So what we do at MNP is we extract those personal things from what's called an embedded family office, which is what you have in your own business. So as Roy kindly mentioned earlier, once you and your families are here, you need taken care of in a very different way than as you're on your way, whether you're here permanently or not. So the few different things that are really key are making sure that you have appropriate planning for here, whether it's financial planning to make sure that, again, part of what Roy and his team do as far as part of the verification, as far as the net worth statement, all those sorts of things, is to make sure you have adequate insurance. Should something happen to you, what happens to your business? If you have a home, or let's say someone is very asset rich, for example, they have real estate, they have industrial, commercial spaces, or an operating business. If something happens to you, when, it's just a matter of when something happens to you, at that time, do you have liquidity? Or, to be able to pay a tax bill, to be able to pay, whatever liabilities there are, or do you all of a sudden have to have a fire sale of your assets? So making sure that things are adequately planned and you know what your liabilities are when someone passes away. The key, when you have investments currently, good, thank you. When you have investments, do you have the appropriate understanding of what your investments are? You go to your stockbroker, you go to your bank, and they say you've got this, you've got that. Do you understand, what the risks are, what's going on in there, what do you actually have versus what you may want? So understanding your risk profile, your tolerances, what your time horizons are, things of that nature. Family governance, that's basically decision making. So how do you as a family, when you have a family business, for example, or when something happens when the primary business owner suddenly passes away and there's no plan, who's going to make the decisions? I was actually involved in a business where my business partner passed away suddenly, and according to no plan whatsoever, his son stepped in, and the whole thing went sideways. So it was a very real situation. We had a half of a plan. The founder of the company was working towards it, but as a lot of founders of businesses do, they have a hard time letting go. So moving along and making sure that you have, even if you have, a plan that's not perfect, it's better than not having a plan at all or being halfway through a plan. So that ensures that, number one, from a financial standpoint, your family and your company and your business can continue on without a lot of, without any other stress or risk involved. And again, making sure liquidity is there, having, for example, an insurance policy in place to fund any liabilities, to buy out other shareholders if there is anybody, or to ensure that, if you are the principal operator of your business, who's going to step into your shoes and actually run your business? So again, making sure that there's adequate resources there to take care of that. And so where does a family office come into that? That is having that one, to use a construction analogy, general contractor. You're still going to have all your other professionals. The family office doesn't replace your professionals. You still need your lawyer, you still need your accountant, you still need your insurance person, you still need your investment person, but having that general contractor You still need a plumber, you still need a roofer, you still need a framing, all those sorts of things, electricians, all of that. But somebody has to be there to see that picture from a 30,000-foot view and make sure that all the puzzle pieces fit together. And that's what a family office does. And again, having that outside of your business, because often you go to a bank and you get, and I've worked at 2 of the banks, so I'm happy to tell you how bad they are. They give you a free financial plan because you borrow money from them, you have your mortgage there, you have your investments with them, and then they give you a 60-page plan, half of which is disclaimers telling you, go talk to your lawyer, go talk to your accountant, go talk to this. But they hand you that plan, and what do you do with it? You put it in a drawer because you're in charge of it. But what are you also in charge of? You're in charge of running your own business. You're in charge of taking care of your family. You're in charge of everything else. So that's where the family office person comes in and says, okay, we can help you. You do what you do best, which is taking care of your business, take care of, do your personal things. We'll take care of making sure that your lawyer is talking to your accountant, is talking to your insurance person, is talking to your investment person, because somebody needs to see that overall picture. And often most individuals don't know what they don't know. So as an entrepreneur, you're really good at running your business, at making your money, however you operate, but knowing the tax rules, along with the family law rules, along with the estate rules, along with insurance rules. Again, typically, it's very rare that some person knows everything about everything. We know a little bit about everything, but have the specialists, whether they're internal or external, to be able to coordinate and help you through all of those things. And then be there as a sounding board to provide general advice. So what does that get you then? What are the outcomes and the benefits of that sort of advice? Is providing a clear picture of what you have. What are you worth? What does your structure look like? What is a bank going to want to see? So again, to what Roy and his team do is providing an actual structure, is knowing what you can afford. What's your cash flow? What is your, what are your expenses, both from a business and personal side. Understanding what your estate would look like if you passed away in an untimely way. What is that going to look like? What is your tax bill going to be? What is your probate liability going to be? Can we also structure something for your estate plan to avoid a lot of those things? One of the key things that we often see is that when someone has, various lawyers, you have a corporate lawyer that does your incorporation and does your shareholders agreement, and then you have a personal lawyer that does your will, that does your power of attorney. Oftentimes those 2 lawyers don't talk to each other. They don't often know that they need to talk to each other, and your shareholders agreement could be completely contrary to what your will says. Then you have a fight, because if your business partner doesn't want your family as their new business partner when something happens to you, or vice versa, your family thinks they're inheriting the business, but actually the business partner and you have an agreement that that person buys the shares, then again, you have disharmony, you have stress, and you have potentially a legal battle. So again, we want to avoid all that and make sure that all of the pieces talk to each other. Tax efficiency, of course, is something that everybody likes. We don't want to pay more tax than we have to, and often even less. So making sure, again, across all of those areas, that everything fits together appropriately. And again, when something happens, because we all will pass away at some point, when we're gone, how are decisions going to be made by our families, by our shareholders, by whoever's left behind? So an example is a family I'm working with right now, which is a case study, where the dad's working on his estate plan. The 2 kids, one's in the business, one's kind of half in the business, one's not, and not really in the business, but they both expect to inherit 50-50 because they're brothers. And of course, dad wants both of the kids to be fully involved, but is that really fair if one of the kids is the president and CEO and is growing the business, the other one's not really involved, kind of has another job? Should he really be, number one, making decisions about the business when the CEO is growing it and building it? And should they profit the same way? So do you have other agreements in place between them? So if they disagree, or heaven forbid, not heaven forbid, but if you have multiple, you have 3 kids, for example, should everyone have an equal vote? What if 2 of them are always outvoting the 3rd one? Is that fair? Do you know that going in? What are their relationships? So having those rules in place before you need them is always best. And again, having some plan is better than not having any plan at all, because again, we've seen, you can go onto the BC Supreme Court website and see lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, family law area, estate challenges, all sorts of things. And even just having a document. We were working previously with a family who they owned a company here in Canada. They weren't residents at the time. They had this one asset. All of the family was overseas. The father died without a will, and nobody could deal with the company. Nobody did anything because they weren't allowed to. None of the family were applying. There was 10 family members overseas total, and nobody applied to the court to be able to make decisions. So you have this company here that's worth a significant amount of money, and it's just sitting there. The people are trying to operate. The family had to continue loaning money to the company so that it could continue to operate, but there really wasn't anybody in charge. It took 3 years to finally get a professional executor to take over the company, to be in charge of it, deal with the estate. There was a significant amount of probate needed to be paid, significant amount of taxes, and again, there wasn't cash for that. The business ultimately did have to get sold, but that was just part of the, there was a lot more pain than there needed to be for that. In this particular family, as I was mentioning, one of the family, as with a lot of families, dad and 2 sons, everything's pooled, right? It's family money. We're all family, we love each other, everybody understands, we all contribute to the greater good. One of the sons is getting divorced. As much as we like and want to be, family and everything else, the court doesn't look at it that way. And the Family Law Act doesn't look at it that way. 100 million. And the family I used to work for were worth several $billion, is that, regardless of the number of zeros, there's complexity, and a lot of people need that sort of help. And myself, being the son of immigrants, having worked for a unique family like that doesn't care how much money they spend on anything, there's a lot of people that do need that advice. And M&P is a great mid-market firm working with all sorts of people across the board, entrepreneurs, business owners, professionals. Those are the types of people. I mean, that's why I get up out of bed in the morning, is to help families like that. Yeah, I think that's, was there anything else? Oh, and ultimately what we're able to provide and the experience we bring is peace of mind. One of the questions we often ask when we first meet families is, what keeps you up at night? Often you don't know what's going to keep you up at night, and some of the questions I'm going to ask you are going to make you lose even more sleep. But once those decisions are made and once some of those things are worked out and some of those challenges, then hopefully that gives you, your family, and everybody else peace of mind at the end of the day and first thing in the morning when you have a nice night's rest. So with that, our contact details are here, and we'd be happy, to answer any questions that you may have.
So I don't know. The first question is, does it matter if we incorporate our company in a big or a small city? Doesn't make sense.
Do you, whether you incorporate in general or where you incorporate?
I don't know. That was the whole.
One of the challenges I think as well with a lot of entrepreneurs is that you find in smaller cities, you find a lot of general practitioners. So you have someone who does your real estate conveyancing, does your incorporation, does your will, and does all sorts of, does everything under one roof. In a small town, finding a specialist is difficult, but often when things get more complicated, you want to go to a larger city to find a professional. If you have a complicated family, a complicated estate plan, the other piece too is often people in small towns don't like using the people in those small towns because then everybody knows your business, right? It's, often people who are successful in their businesses don't want anyone else in town to know, what they're doing, how much they've got, all those sorts of things. So, but, traveling to a larger town to get a specific advice can also be a lot more expensive. So it really depends on what you need when you need it, but asking the right questions is the most important thing.
Yeah, the great thing is at MNP we have lots of offices in medium or small communities. So for example, in BC we have about 25 offices in Lower Mainland and also on the island and in the interior areas.
Yeah. And we all talk to each other on a regular basis. So if there's somebody in a smaller town that needs some big town assistance, then we're there to provide it.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. For the family office services, a lot of things that you touch base on lies with the accountant, and the other ones lies within the lawyer's responsibilities, and sometimes a combination of the both. So when we get engaged with MMP, do we get the whole package? How does that really work? Because you talked about the outcomes and results, but I was a little confused about the engagement itself.
I didn't talk about the process. Thank you. Great question. So again, it depends, because who is your existing accountant and who is your existing lawyer? So if M&P is already your existing accountant, then we coordinate that. We aren't a law firm and we don't practice law. We know about it. We can identify issues, and we speak the language, because often, lawyers will be very technical, accountants can be very technical, for our colleagues over at DMCL with their earlier tax discussion. But then there are other partners who can speak a lot more, plainly about issues and challenges, and then also have the technical conversations with the respective subject matter experts. So then having, and again, it really depends on who you have and who you want to keep using. So we're happy to work with any other firms, legal, tax, whatever it is. We're, in that respect, open architecture. Would we prefer you use M&P for your tax work too? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean I won't talk to your other specialist either.
Okay, and then next question is, can we use our inheritance to show our financial assets?
That's a right question. Can you use your inheritance to talk about that for your financial assets?
Yeah.
Well, that's a great question. Actually, for different provinces, the requirements are a little bit different. So, for example, in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, they don't recognize the assets or gifts received within 6 months. However, in other provinces such as BC or Ontario, there is no such kind of limitation. And for the inheritance that has not been received, basically for all the provinces, that is not recognized. However, if that has been received and it has been gone through the court or the legal process, then that is recognized as your household net worth.
Okay, so, and the last question from my side is, my husband bought a house, but the sale is not finalized yet. Can we use that?
So the question is, the husband purchased a house and the deal has not been finalized. That means the house has not been transferred to the purchaser, right?
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah, that's also a great question. So typically, when you look at that scenario, if the property has been purchased or you have been put, let's say, retainer or down payment, however, the title has not been transferred, you still can claim that. However, you can only claim the money you put as the retainer. So for example, the total value of the property, let's say, is 1 million, and you put, let's say, 30% as a retainer, or 30% that is used as a down payment. And at the date of the application, the title has not been transferred. So you can claim on your net worth statement that is 300,000 as the value of that property, or you can claim it as an other asset.
No other questions?
No?
Thank you very much.
Oh.
Is there any questions that I don't see?
Okay. Ma'am,
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for useful information. So let me conclude by thanking you all for your time and your valuable insight. We look forward to welcoming you again at our immigration conference in 2023, and have a nice evening.